I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt like they were filling with concrete as I stood in the back of the conference room, watching my 6 months of work, my ideas, my solutions, my 3 a.m. breakthroughs, being presented by people who couldn't even explain how the algorithms worked. And there was Warren, my boss, beaming with pride as if he'd personally crafted every line of code in the proposal. As you can see, our team at Helios has developed a revolutionary approach, he said, gesturing to everyone but me. My name is Avery Merrick, 36, and until that moment, I'd spent 8 years of my life believing that exceptional work would eventually be recognized. Before I continue, if you're watching this from somewhere around the world, let me know where in the comments, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. I was the only female senior developer at Helios Innovations, which made me both a token and a target. I'd learned to exist in that uncomfortable space to work twice as hard just to be considered half as competent. But this project was different. The Meridian contract was the biggest opportunity our firm had ever pursued. $5.8 million to develop an AI-driven supply chain management system that could save their international operations millions more annually. When the project first came in, nobody wanted it. Too complex, too many unknowns, impossible timeline. Warren had practically thrown the brief at me during a staff meeting. Avery, see if you can make sense of this mess. I remember the dismissive tone, the implicit expectation of failure. My male colleagues exchanged those looks, the ones that said, better her than us. For 6 months, I lived that project. Canceled my trip to my cousin's wedding, missed my nephew's birthday, worked through pneumonia that left me coughing blood into tissues I hid in my desk drawer. I built that system from scratch, solving problems that industry leaders had declared technically unfeasible just months earlier. The night I finally cracked the distribution algorithm, the one that would reduce Meridian's shipping costs by 41%, I was alone in the office at early morning 2:17 a.m. I remember calling my mom, hands shaking with excitement, trying to explain it in layperson's terms. She didn't understand the technical breakthrough, but she understood my tears of relief. "They'll have to see your value now, honey," she'd said. 2 weeks before the presentation, I noticed something shifting. Warren began scheduling alignment meetings about the Meridian presentation that somehow never included me. Darren Frost from Business Development started asking detailed questions about my code. Celia Vaughn, who hadn't contributed a single component to the project, was suddenly reviewing all deliverables. I told myself this was normal. Final preparations, everyone making sure they understood the solution before the big presentation. Then I found the slide deck. I hadn't been asked to prepare it, which should have been my first red flag. I opened it out of curiosity while working late again, and froze as I scrolled through 42 pages that presented my work without once mentioning my name. The presenter notes showed that Darren would explain the technical architecture. Marcus would walk through the implementation approach. Warren would handle the innovative algorithm that was the crown jewel of the entire solution. My crown jewel. My innovation. I confronted Warren the next morning, trying to keep my voice steady as I pointed out the oversight. "Avery," he said, not even looking up from his phone. "This is an executive presentation. We need our strongest communicators handling this. You're more of a behind-the-scenes person, aren't you? You're not really comfortable with the spotlight." "But it's my work," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. He finally looked up, his expression a perfect blend of condescension and false concern. "It's Helios's work. We're a team, remember? And teams win together." Then the kicker. "Besides, you're not polished enough for the C-suite yet. The way you dress, your presentation style, it's just not executive ready." I walked out of his office feeling like I'd been slapped. 8 years at this company, a master's degree from Carnegie Mellon. I'd sacrificed relationships, health, any semblance of work-life balance, and I wasn't polished enough. Which brings me back to that conference room, where I stood against the wall, invisible, watching everyone else take credit for my work. Riel Takahashi, Meridian's CEO, sat at the head of the table, flanked by her executive team. She asked incisive questions that my team fumbled through answering. "And the distribution algorithm, the 41% reduction, looks incredible," But how do you account for weather pattern disruptions in the Southeast Asian corridor? She asked. Warren looked at Darren. Darren looked at Marcus. Marcus cleared his throat. Well, we've integrated several variables that... We're using a modified Bayesian approach. I interrupted from the back of the room, unable to watch this train wreck any longer. The algorithm adapts to meteorological data in real time, with fallback protocols that trigger alternative routing based on predictive modeling rather than reactive adjustments. The room went silent. 20 heads turned to look at me, most from my company wearing expressions of shock or anger. But Riel Takahashi was simply curious. And you are? She asked. Before I could answer, Warren jumped in. That's Avery, one of our developers who helped with some of the coding elements. Something in me snapped. 6 months of work, my innovation, my solution, reduced to some of the coding elements. Actually, I said, stepping forward, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I designed and built the entire system architecture. The distribution algorithm is based on my research from last year's white paper on adaptive supply chain dynamics. I wrote every line of code in the core modules and personally solved the Southeast Asian weather pattern challenge you just mentioned. The silence that followed was deafening. Warren's face had turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. Riel Takahashi set down her pen. Interesting. So you're the architect of this solution? Yes, I said simply. Then perhaps you should be the one presenting it, she said, her gaze shifting meaningfully to Warren. What happened next still plays in my mind like a slow-motion car crash. Warren laughed, actually laughed, and said, Avery tends to exaggerate her contributions. She's valuable, but this was absolutely a team effort led by our senior staff. I felt dizzy, like the floor was tilting beneath me. 8 years of diminishment crystallized in that moment. I'd been naive to think this time would be different. Riel was watching me, not Warren. Her eyes sharp, evaluating, seemed to see right through the dynamics in the room. In that case, she said, still looking at me, I have a simple request. I'd like Miss Merrick to walk us through the technical documentation. Right now. Warren's smile faltered. We hadn't planned to get into that level of detail today. I insist, Riel said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. If this was truly a team effort, then anyone on the team should be able to explain the core architecture. She turned to me. Miss Merrick, would you mind? For the next 40 minutes, I walked through every aspect of the system. The architecture decisions, the trade-offs, the innovations that made it unique. I answered questions with a confidence born from knowing every inch of what I'd built. No one interrupted. No one clarified my points. They couldn't. When I finished, Riel nodded slowly. Thank you for that clarification. She turned to her team. I think we've seen what we needed to see. I thought that would be the end of it. A momentary victory, but ultimately meaningless. Warren would find a way to punish me later. The system at Helios wouldn't change. But as the meeting wrapped up, Riel approached me directly. Ms. Merrick, I'd like you to stay behind for a moment. My team filed out, Warren throwing me a look that promised consequences. When the room had emptied except for Riel and her CFO, she closed the door. That was quite illuminating, she said. I have one more question for you. The contract we're about to sign with Helios. Whose signature will be on the technical specifications? I don't know, I admitted. Probably Warren's, as the department head. She shook her head. That won't work for us. The person who designed this system needs to sign off on it. That would be you, correct? Yes, but... No buts. If you built it, you signed for it. That's non-negotiable for us. Accountability matters at Meridian. She handed me her business card. My direct line is on the back. If there's any problem with this request, call me immediately. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the meeting, the look on Warren's face, Riel's unexpected intervention. By morning, I'd made a decision that had been 8 years in the making. I dressed with particular care that day. Not in the muted grays and blacks that helped me blend into Helios's male-dominated environment, but in a deep blue suit that I'd bought years ago and never had the courage to wear to the office. As expected, I was summoned to Warren's office first thing. He was already mid-tirade when I walked in. The most unprofessional display I've ever seen. You undermined the entire team, made us look disorganized. I told the truth, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. You don't understand how this works, Avery. This is business. No one succeeds alone. You're part of a team, and a team that was taking credit for my work, I interrupted. His face darkened. This attitude is exactly why you're not ready for client-facing roles. You're too emotional, too focused on individual recognition. Riel Takahashi wants my signature on the technical specifications, I said. That stopped him cold. What? Meridian requires that the person who designed the system sign off on the technical specs. That's me. Warren's expression shifted from anger to calculation so quickly it was almost comical. Well, that's just a formality. You'll sign as the technical lead, under my overall approval. I took a deep breath. I'll sign it, but only under certain conditions. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's not how this works. It is now, I said, pulling out a document I'd prepared the night before. These are my terms. First, my role as lead architect will be formally acknowledged in all project documentation and communications. Second, I'll lead the implementation team. Third, I want a 15% raise effective immediately, which still puts me below what Darren and Marcus make, by the way. Warren's face flushed. This is extortion. This is negotiation, I corrected. You need my signature. Meridian won't proceed without it. And unlike yesterday, today I understand my value. I could fire you for this, he threatened. You could, I agreed. But then you'd have to explain to Riel Takahashi why the person who built the system she's investing $5.8 million in is suddenly unavailable. I don't think that conversation would go well for you or Helios. He stared at me with naked hatred. I always knew you'd be trouble. Women like you always are. I smiled then, feeling something shift permanently inside me. You haven't seen trouble yet, Warren. This is just me finally taking my place at the table. You have until end of day to accept my terms. After that, I call Riel directly. I left Warren's office with my legs trembling but my head high. Anyone watching would have thought I was confident, collected. Inside, I was terrified. 8 years of keeping my head down, of being the good employee who never complained, and I'd just blown it all up in 15 minutes. My phone buzzed as I reached my desk. A text from my sister, Nora. Did you talk to him yet? What happened? I texted back. I did it. Gave him my terms. Now we wait. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, holy shit, Av. I'm proud of you. Terrified, but proud. Warren didn't keep me waiting long. By noon, HR called me into a meeting with Vanessa Kruger, the department head, and Warren himself. Their faces told me everything I needed to know before a word was spoken. The conference room felt cold, almost clinical, as I took my seat across from them. Avery, Vanessa began, her voice professionally neutral. We've reviewed your requests regarding the Meridian project. My terms, I corrected quietly. A flash of irritation crossed her face. Your terms, then. While we value your contributions to the project, your approach to this situation has been inappropriate and borders on insubordination. Warren sat silently, a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth. However, Vanessa continued, given the client's specific request and the timeline constraints, we're prepared to make some accommodations. The accommodations were a joke. They'd acknowledge me as a key technical contributor but not lead architect. I could join the implementation team but not lead it. And they offered a 5% performance bonus instead of the raise. This is our final offer, Vanessa said, sliding a document across the table. We need your signature on the Meridian specs by end of day. I looked at the paper, then at Warren's smug face, then back at the document. 8 years of moments like this flashed through my mind, watching male colleagues with half my qualifications get promoted over me, sitting in meetings where my ideas were ignored until a man repeated them, being called difficult when I was simply being thorough. No, I said, pushing the paper back. Those aren't the terms I outlined. Warren's smile vanished. For God's sake, Avery, be reasonable. I've been reasonable for 8 years, I replied. It got me nowhere. Vanessa's professional mask slipped slightly. Think carefully about what you're doing. This is a career-defining project. You don't want to be remembered as the person who derailed it over ego. I almost laughed. My ego? After watching my entire team puff themselves up with my work? My terms stand, I said, standing up. You have until 5 p.m. I walked out, closed the door behind me, and promptly locked myself in a bathroom stall where I had what can only be described as a silent panic attack. What was I doing? I was risking everything. My job, my reputation, my financial stability, all because I couldn't swallow my pride one more time. But it wasn't pride, was it? It was dignity. It was truth. It was finally acknowledging that I deserved better than being used and discarded. At late afternoon, 4:47 p.m., as I was contemplating calling Riel Takahashi, Vanessa appeared at my desk. We've reconsidered, she said stiffly. Your terms are acceptable, with minor modifications. She handed me a new document. They'd agreed to acknowledge me as lead architect and to let me lead the implementation team. The raise was 12%, not 15%, but it was substantially more than their initial offer. We expect you to handle this transition professionally, she added, a warning in her tone. No gloating, no creating division in the team. I'm always professional, I said, signing the agreement. That's never been the issue here. That night, I celebrated with Nora over takeout Thai food in my apartment. I can't believe you actually did it, she said, raising her wine glass in a toast. To my sister, who finally grew a spine. I've always had a spine, I said. I just stopped hunching. So what happens now? She asked. Won't Warren make your life hell? I nodded slowly. Probably. But something's changed, Nora. I'm not afraid anymore. The next few weeks proved me both right and wrong. Warren didn't make my life hell, he made me invisible. He spoke around me, through me, over me, but never to me. In meetings, he acted as if my chair was empty. The only acknowledgement of my existence came in the form of impossible deadlines and midnight emails demanding immediate responses. Meanwhile, I received a formal acknowledgement as lead architect on the Meridian project. My name appeared on all the official documentation. I built my implementation team, deliberately including 2 junior female developers who showed promise but had been overlooked. And every week, I had a direct call with Riel Takahashi to update her on our progress. Those calls became my lifeline, the one place where my expertise was respected without question, where I didn't have to fight to be heard. 3 months into implementation, something unexpected happened. Riel asked to meet me for coffee during her visit to our city. We met at a small cafe far from the Helios offices, where she got straight to the point. Your work on our system has been exceptional, she said after minimal small talk. The implementation is ahead of schedule, and the early results are better than projected. But I'm concerned. About the project? I asked, confused. About you? She said. Every time we speak, I can sense the environment you're working in. It's not sustainable, Avery. Talent like yours shouldn't be constantly fighting for basic respect. I didn't know what to say. I'd become so accustomed to workplace hostility that I'd stopped seeing it as abnormal. Can I be blunt? She continued, not waiting for my response. You're being wasted at Helios, and based on what I saw in that presentation room, nothing's going to change there. She placed a business card on the table between us. Not her personal card this time, but one for Meridian's CTO, Julian Chen. We're building a new innovation division, she said. Julian's looking for a director to lead it. Your name came up in our discussions. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. You want me to work for Meridian? We want you to lead a team at Meridian, she corrected. With the appropriate title, compensation, and authority. No more fighting for scraps, Avery. The offer was extraordinary. Double my current salary, equity in the company, and a leadership role reporting directly to the CTO. It was everything I'd ever worked for. Everything I'd been denied at Helios. I'd need to think about it, I said, my mind racing. And there's the Helios implementation to complete. Of course, Riel said. We're not asking you to leave your team hanging. Finish the implementation. but know that this door is open. I walked back to the Helios office in a daze, the business card burning a hole in my pocket. For the first time in years, I felt something dangerous. Hope. That hope carried me through the next 2 months of Warren's Cold War, through the snide comments from colleagues who resented my new authority, through the exhaustion of leading the implementation while being actively undermined. The system went live on schedule. It worked perfectly. The Meridian executives were thrilled. At the launch celebration, Riel publicly acknowledged me as the architect and implementation leader of the project that would transform their company. Warren stood in the corner, glaring, as she presented me with a formal letter of commendation. Everyone applauded. No one met my eyes except my small implementation team, who beamed with genuine pride in what we'd accomplished together. The next day, I submitted my resignation. 2 weeks later, I walked out of Helios for the last time. No goodbye party, no well wishes, just the silent relief of escape. On my first day at Meridian, Julian Chen gave me a tour of my new division. Build your team however you want, he told me. You've got budget for 12 headcount to start. I know exactly who I want, I said. Within a month, I'd recruited 4 people from Helios, including the 2 junior developers I'd mentored during implementation. They weren't the only ones who wanted to leave. After my departure, the floodgates opened. People who'd been silently suffering reached out, asking if there were opportunities at Meridian. I couldn't hire them all, but I could listen. I could validate their experiences. I could connect them with other companies in my network. And slowly, a community formed refugees from toxic workplaces, supporting each other, recommending each other, lifting each other up. 6 months after I left, Helios lost the Archer contract, their second biggest client to a competitor, using Meridian's new supply chain system. Our system. My system. 1 year after I left, Warren was quietly demoted. The official reason was restructuring, but industry whispers told a different story. Too many talented people had left his department. Too many projects had fallen behind schedule. The magic that had once made his team the crown jewel of Helios had vanished. 2 years after I left, I was invited to speak at the Women in Tech conference about innovation in supply chain management. From the stage, I could see familiar faces in the audience, former Helios colleagues who'd found better opportunities, who'd stopped accepting less than they deserved. And in the back row, looking considerably older and decidedly uncomfortable, sat Warren. He'd been sent by Helios to explore new technologies after their innovation pipeline had dried up. Our eyes met briefly across the crowded room. I didn't smile. I didn't glare. I simply acknowledged his presence with a small nod before returning to my presentation. That moment wasn't about revenge. It was about something more powerful. Indifference. He no longer had the power to hurt me, to diminish me, to make me doubt my worth. After my talk, a young developer approached me, clutching a notebook nervously. "Your story inspired me," she said. "I'm in a situation at work. It's like you described. My ideas, my code, but somehow never my credit." I recognized the pain in her eyes, the doubt, the confusion, the gradual erosion of confidence. "What's your name?" I asked. "Zoe," she replied. "Listen carefully, Zoe," I said, taking her hands in mine. "What they're doing isn't just unfair, it's theft. Your work has value, your voice has value, and you have choices." I told her about Riel's coffee shop offer, about the fear and exhilaration of finally standing up for myself, about the community of support I'd found on the other side. "It won't be easy," I warned, "but staying is harder, in ways you don't even realize until you've left." "How do I start?" she asked. I smiled, remembering my own first step, by recognizing that your silence has been protecting the wrong people. 3 years after leaving Helios, my division at Meridian was responsible for 22% of the company's growth. I led a team of 34 brilliant, diverse developers who knew their worth and whose contributions were celebrated, not stolen. And 5 years after that fateful presentation, I received an email that made me laugh out loud in my corner office. It was from a recruitment firm reaching out on behalf of Helios Innovations. They were looking for a new VP of technology, someone who could revitalize their innovation culture and lead them into a new era. I politely declined the opportunity to interview, but I did forward the position to several qualified women in my network, with a detailed briefing on exactly how much they should demand in salary negotiations. The ultimate revenge wasn't watching Warren's downfall or Helios's struggles. It wasn't even my own success, though that was certainly satisfying. The real revenge was changing the system itself, building a community where talent was recognized regardless of gender, where credit was given, where the next generation of Averys wouldn't have to fight the same battles I did. Some people say success is the best revenge. I disagree. The best revenge is creating a world where what happened to you cannot easily happen to someone else. It's using your hard-won power to hold the door open behind you. It's turning your pain into purpose. Do I still think about that day in the conference room, standing against the wall, watching others take credit for my work? Of course I do. Some wounds leave scars that never fully fade. But those scars remind me of who I was, who I became, and why I do what I do now. So let me ask you, have you ever had your work stolen, your contributions erased, your value questioned? Tell me in the comments, not just what happened, but what you did about it. Your story matters. Your experience matters. And if you're watching this from a place that feels like my old life, undervalued, overlooked, slowly disappearing, know that there's another way. It starts with recognizing your worth. It continues with finding your voice. And it never, ever ends with settling for less than you deserve. Subscribe if this resonated with you. There are more stories to tell, more battles to fight, more victories to celebrate. And trust me, the view from the other side is worth every terrifying step of the journey. My nephew has protection. I control HR. Drop it, Vernon said with a dismissive wave, not even looking up from his computer. Know your place, Danny. The decision is final. The words hit me like a physical impact, knocking the air from my lungs. I stood frozen before his gleaming desk, watching him casually destroy 5 years of my dedicated work. 5 years of solving impossible engineering challenges. 5 years of watching less qualified people rise while I stayed behind. With all due respect, sir, your nephew isn't qualified to lead advanced projects. He can't explain basic aerodynamic principles without stammering. The wing concept that saved this company millions was my design, my innovation. I earned that promotion. Vernon finally looked up, annoyance flickering across his face. Are you suggesting I'm playing favorites? Kyle has an impressive background. He's brought fresh perspectives to our team. Fresh perspectives. I couldn't help the edge in my voice. He asked me yesterday what thrust vectoring meant. That's undergraduate material, sir. And those accomplishments on his resume? I checked with people at those companies. No one remembers him doing what he claims. Enough! Vernon's palm slammed against the desk. You're becoming a problem, Danny. A problem I don't need. My nephew has protection. I control HR. Drop it. The anger burning inside me remained contained, but just barely. I straightened my spine and looked directly into his eyes. You have no idea who you're dealing with. You have 10 minutes to fix this. Vernon's laugh was short and sharp. Are you threatening me? With what exactly? Nobody will believe you over me. This conversation is over. I left without another word, closing his door softly behind me. My heart hammered in my chest as I walked through the maze of cubicles, nodding mechanically at colleagues. Nobody knew what had just happened. Nobody knew what I was about to do. The weight of my phone felt heavy in my pocket. One call would change everything. Wait, before I tell you what happened next, if you're enjoying this story so far, please tap that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like this one. Your support means everything, and it helps me keep sharing these real-life dramas with you. Now, let's get back to what happened after I left Vernon's office. My name is Danielle Keegan, but everyone calls me Danny. I've always been the person who solves problems others can't crack. Growing up with 4 brothers taught me to fight for recognition, a skill that served me well in the male-dominated aerospace industry. For 5 years, I'd been the backbone of Aerodyne's innovation team. When the previous wing design failed crucial safety tests, threatening a multi-million-dollar government contract, I worked 80-hour weeks developing an alternative that ultimately saved the project. The industry publications praised the revolutionary design, though my name appeared nowhere in the press releases. I accepted staying in the shadows because I believed my work would eventually speak for itself. When Arthur, our advanced projects director, announced his retirement, I thought my moment had finally arrived. I had the experience, the technical knowledge, and the respect of the engineering team. Then Kyle appeared. Kyle was Vernon's nephew, 28 years old with artificially whitened teeth and designer suits that seemed at odds with an engineer's salary. His resume boasted impressive achievements at 3 different aerospace companies, yet he struggled with concepts I mastered in my second year of college. "We're lucky to have Kyle join our team," Vernon had announced at the monthly meeting. "He brings extraordinary talent and fresh insights to Aerodyne." I watched my colleagues exchange glances. We all knew what was happening, but nobody dared say it aloud. 3 weeks later came the announcement that confirmed our suspicions. Kyle would take over as Advanced Projects Director when Arthur retired next month. The injustice burned inside me, but I tried to follow proper channels. I scheduled a meeting with Human Resources to discuss my concerns about Kyle's qualifications. "We appreciate your dedication, Danny," said Priya from HR, her expression sympathetic but firm. "But we need you to be a team player here. Kyle has excellent credentials, and Vernon speaks very highly of him." "Have you verified those credentials?" I asked. "Because I've made some calls, and that won't be necessary," Priya interrupted, suddenly looking uncomfortable. "The hiring committee has reviewed everything thoroughly." Next, I approached my direct supervisor, Arthur himself, the man whose position was at stake. "I know exactly what you're feeling, Danny," Arthur said quietly as we sat in the empty conference room. "And between us, you deserve that promotion. But Vernon has the ear of the board. He's been here 20 years. Fighting him isn't worth ending your career over. So we just let someone unqualified lead critical safety projects? Our designs go into aircraft carrying hundreds of passengers, Arthur." Arthur's shoulders slumped. "Sometimes we have to pick our battles. The system isn't fair, but it's the system we have." That conversation led me to Vernon's office, to my ultimatum, and now to the decision I never wanted to make. I walked to my car in the underground parking garage, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Inside the privacy of my vehicle, I pulled out my phone and stared at it. The contact name glowed back at me. Eliza Wilson. Eliza and I had been roommates in college 15 years ago. We'd stayed close as our careers diverged, mine into aerospace engineering, hers into government oversight. She was now the Federal Aviation Administration's lead safety inspector scheduled to approve Aerodyne's new commercial aircraft line next week. I had never used our friendship professionally. I had built my career on merit and hard work, but Vernon had changed the rules of the game. My finger hovered over her name. Was I really going to do this? Once this call was made, there would be no going back. I thought about Kyle, who would be responsible for decisions that affected passenger safety without understanding basic principles. I thought about the design modifications he'd already approved without proper testing. Nothing catastrophic, but concerning enough that they needed expert review and a rubber stamp from someone who couldn't tell aluminum alloys apart. I pressed call. "Hey, Danny." Eliza's voice was warm. "I was just thinking about you. I'll be in town next week for the Aerodyne inspection." "That's actually why I'm calling," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "We need to talk about some modifications that have been approved for the new aircraft line. There are safety concerns you should know about before the inspection." "What kind of concerns?" Her tone immediately shifted to professional alertness. "Design changes approved without proper testing protocols, modifications to control systems that haven't been through the full review process." I took a deep breath. "And most importantly, the person who approved them lacks the qualifications to make those judgments." "That's a serious allegation, Danny." "I know. I wouldn't make it if I wasn't certain." Silence stretched between us. Then Eliza spoke carefully. "This sounds like something that needs an emergency review before the scheduled inspection. I can arrange a meeting with the board tomorrow morning. I'll need you to provide specific details." "I can do that," I said. After hanging up, I sat motionless in my car. Had I crossed a line? Would this decision haunt my career? The aerospace industry was tight-knit. Word would spread about what I'd done. My phone lit up. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Hello? Who the hell are you?" The voice was female, tight with barely controlled panic. "This is Miriam Ashford, Aerodyne board chair. The government inspector just called demanding an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. She mentioned potential safety concerns from an insider." My heart raced. "Yes, Ms. Ashford. I'm Danielle Keegan from the innovation team. Do you understand what this could do to our certification timeline? To our stock value when this leaks? to our entire government contract? I understand exactly what it could do, I replied quietly. We're ready to accept all of your terms. Just stop what you started, she pleaded. Whatever you want, just tell your friend to back off. I tried addressing my concerns through proper channels, I said. I was told to know my place. The line went silent for a moment. Then Miriam spoke again, her voice carefully controlled. What exactly do you want, Ms. Keegan? That question hung in the air between us. What did I want? Justice? Recognition? Or something more? Before I could answer, my phone signaled another incoming call. I asked Miriam to hold and switched calls. What have you done? Vernon hissed without preamble. His voice had lost all its previous confidence. The FAA inspector just called an emergency meeting. She mentioned concerns about Kyle's qualifications and modified designs. I believe I mentioned you had 10 minutes to fix the situation, I said calmly. You laughed. You can't do this. You'll never work in aerospace again. I'll make sure of it. That's where you're wrong, Vernon. The inspection is happening because there are legitimate safety concerns. Your nephew approved modifications without proper testing. That's not spite, that's fact. Tell me what you want, he said, his voice suddenly pleading. A promotion? Money? Name it. I want the qualified person to lead advanced projects. I want accountability, and I want assurance that safety isn't compromised for nepotism. Fine, you can have the director position. I'll move Kyle somewhere else. Just call off the inspector. It's too late for that, I said. The concerns have been officially logged. The inspection will happen. But how badly it goes for Aerodyne depends on what happens next. I switched back to Miriam. I'm sorry for the wait, Ms. Ashford. As I was about to explain, I want 3 things. First, I want to be named Executive Director of Safety and Innovation, reporting directly to the board, not to Vernon. Second, I want to build my own team of qualified engineers. Third, I want Vernon and Kyle transferred away from any position that influences critical design decisions. That's substantial, Miriam said carefully. The board would need to discuss this. Of course. You have until the emergency inspection tomorrow at 9 a.m. I should mention that I've documented all the improper design approvals and qualification discrepancies. If Aerodyne chooses to retaliate against me, that documentation will go directly to the FAA and the press. You've thought this through, Miriam said, sounding almost impressed. I'm an engineer. Thinking through problems is what I do. As I hung up, my hands finally began to shake. I'd just gambled my entire career on one bold move against a powerful executive. But sometimes, standing up for what's right requires risking everything. I had no idea if they would meet my demands or if I'd just committed professional suicide. All I knew was that I couldn't remain silent any longer. The next 8 hours would determine everything. 9 o'clock that evening found me sitting in my modest apartment, staring at the walls. The bold move I'd made earlier still didn't feel real. My cat, Penny, sensed my anxiety and curled against my leg, purring softly as if trying to reassure me. What did I just do, Penny? I whispered, scratching behind her ears. Either I just saved my career or completely destroyed it. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since I left the office. 6 missed calls from Vernon, 4 from numbers I didn't recognize, 12 text messages asking what was happening. Word had spread through the company like wildfire. Something big was brewing. I'd turned off all notifications and spent the evening meticulously organizing my evidence. Every email about the wing design that saved the company millions. Screenshots of the modified specifications Kyle had approved without proper testing. Witness statements from 3 engineers who heard Kyle ask basic questions that any qualified aerospace engineer should know. At 9:42 p.m., my doorbell rang. My heart jumped to my throat. Nobody ever visited this late. I approached the door cautiously and checked the peephole. Arthur stood in the hallway, looking exhausted. My retiring boss, the current advanced projects director whose position was at the center of this storm. I opened the door. Arthur, this is unexpected. May I come in? He asked, his voice low. There are some things you should know before tomorrow. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Arthur had always been fair to me, even if he hadn't fought for my promotion. He entered and declined my offer of tea, remaining standing. The board has been in emergency session for the past 3 hours, he said without preamble. Vernon is fighting for his life in there. What do you mean? Arthur's expression was grim. This isn't the first time Vernon has placed unqualified relatives in key positions. 2 years ago, before you joined our team, His brother-in-law briefly headed procurement. He approved substandard materials that nearly caused a testing failure. I stared at him. I never heard about this. It was hushed up. The board gave Vernon a warning and made him remove his brother-in-law. They thought he'd learned his lesson. Arthur shook his head. When you triggered the FAA inspection, Miriam started digging. She found a pattern. My mouth went dry. What kind of pattern? Vernon has been building a network of friends and family throughout the company, people who owe him loyalty over qualified candidates. The board was blind to it until now. He paused. I'm here because Vernon is trying to paint you as disgruntled and unstable. He's claiming you fabricated evidence because you couldn't handle being passed over. Anger flared in my chest. That's ridiculous. I have documented proof. It's strong and… Arthur held up his hand. I know. That's why I'm here. I've decided to speak to the board tomorrow, to tell them what I know about your contributions and Kyle's lack of qualifications. I sat down heavily on my couch. Why now, Arthur? Why didn't you speak up before? His face flushed with shame. Because I was a coward. I'm retiring in 4 weeks with a generous package. I didn't want to rock the boat. He met my eyes. But what you did today, having the courage to risk everything for what's right, it made me realize I can't leave this way. I can't let Vernon destroy someone else's career to advance his family. A lump formed in my throat. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Vernon has powerful allies. Tomorrow won't be easy. After Arthur left, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment, rehearsing what I would say at the emergency inspection. Around midnight, my phone chimed with a text from Eliza. Be prepared. They'll try to discredit you. At 6 a.m., exhausted but resolute, I dressed in my most professional outfit, charcoal pants, cream blouse, and the navy blazer I reserved for important presentations. As I applied minimal makeup, I studied my reflection. The woman staring back had dark circles under her eyes but a determined set to her jaw. I arrived at Aerodyne headquarters at 7:30, wanting to be early and settled before the 9 a.m. meeting. The security guard gave me an odd look as I badged in. Clearly, he'd heard something was happening. The office was eerily quiet for a workday, with most cubicles empty. I headed to my workspace to gather additional materials and found Ryan from my team already there, looking concerned. Danny, he said in a hushed voice, everyone's talking. Is it true you reported safety issues to the FAA? I reported concerns through the proper channels, I said carefully. Ryan glanced around nervously. Vernon's assistant was clearing out his office earlier. My eyebrows shot up. What? Yeah, putting things in boxes. And there's a rumor the board has been here since 5 a.m. He lowered his voice further. And Kyle didn't badge in today. Before I could process this information, my phone rang. Miriam Ashford. Ms. Keegan, she said when I answered. Please come to the executive conference room immediately. The inspection isn't until 9, I said, checking my watch. It was only 7:45. This is a pre-meeting. Just you, me, and 2 board members. Now please. My pulse quickened. I'm on my way. Ryan gave me a thumbs up as I grabbed my materials and headed for the elevator. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this an ambush? Were they going to try to pressure me into withdrawing my complaints before Eliza arrived? The executive conference room occupied the corner of the top floor, with glass walls offering a panoramic view of the city. As I approached, I could see 4 people inside, not 3 as Miriam had indicated. Miriam sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 older men I recognized from company photos as board members. The 4th person was Vernon. My steps faltered. Vernon's presence suggested this wasn't going in my favor. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and entered. Ms. Keegan, thank you for joining us, Miriam said formally. Please sit. I took the only empty chair, directly across from Vernon. His face was ashen, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Before the FAA inspection, we wanted to address the situation directly, Miriam continued. Mr. Harris has something to say. Vernon cleared his throat. I've submitted my resignation, effective immediately. I blinked in surprise, certain I'd misheard. I'm sorry? The board has accepted my resignation, Vernon said, his voice hollow, and withdrawn Kyle's appointment as Advanced Projects Director. Miriam took over. Ms. Keegan, the board has conducted an emergency review of the situation. What we found was concerning, not just regarding Kyle's qualifications, but a pattern of questionable appointments and decisions over several years. One of the board members, a silver-haired man with sharp eyes, leaned forward. We've spent the night reviewing personnel files and project approvals. We found at least 7 instances where Vernon placed underqualified friends or family in positions they shouldn't have held. And more troublingly, the other board member added, we identified multiple cases where safety protocols were abbreviated or bypassed entirely. I struggled to keep my expression neutral. I wasn't aware of the extent. Neither were we, Miriam said grimly, until you forced us to look. Vernon finally spoke again. I want to be clear that I never intentionally compromised safety. I believed in the people I promoted. Regardless of intent, Miriam said sharply, the effect was the same. And now we face an FAA inspection that could potentially ground our entire new aircraft line. My mind raced. This was unfolding far differently than I'd expected. What happens now? Miriam slid a folder across the table. Inside is a written offer. We're prepared to meet all your conditions. Executive Director of Safety and Innovation, reporting directly to the board. Authority to build your own team. Vernon and Kyle are already out. I opened the folder and skimmed the document. The terms were exactly as I'd requested, with a salary significantly higher than I'd anticipated. This is contingent on the FAA inspection, I assume? The silver-haired board member shook his head. No, this offer stands regardless. We need someone with your integrity heading safety operations. The question is whether you can help us address the issues before the inspector arrives. I looked at Vernon, who sat in defeated silence, then back to the board members. I need to understand something first. Why wasn't Arthur in this meeting? He's still the current Advanced Projects Director. The 3 board members exchanged glances. Arthur came to us last night, Miriam finally said. He provided detailed information about your contributions and Kyle's shortcomings. He also admitted his own failure to speak up earlier. He offered his immediate resignation as part of taking responsibility. My heart sank. Did you accept it? We're discussing that. His honesty counts in his favor, but his silence until now is troubling. I took a deep breath. I have conditions beyond what's in this folder. Vernon's head snapped up, his expression incredulous. Go on, Miriam said cautiously. First, Arthur stays until his planned retirement date. His experience is valuable for transition, and he ultimately did the right thing. Miriam nodded slowly. We can agree to that. Second, I want a complete safety audit of every project Vernon or his appointees have touched in the past 3 years, conducted by an independent third party. Reasonable, the silver-haired board member said. Third, I want a written acknowledgement of my contributions to the wing design project, including in any future publications or presentations. Done, Miriam said. And finally, I said, looking directly at Vernon, I want your assurance that every employee affected by nepotism will have their cases reviewed fairly for possible advancement or compensation. Vernon's jaw tightened, but he nodded stiffly. Then I'll help you prepare for the FAA inspection, I said. I believe we can address the most critical issues before 9 a.m. if we start immediately. Miriam stood. I'll have legal finalize the paperwork while we work. Thank you, Ms. Keegan. As we left the conference room to begin the urgent safety review, Vernon remained seated, staring out at the city skyline that was no longer his to command. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. I assembled a small team of the most trustworthy engineers, and we systematically identified and documented every questionable design modification Kyle had approved. We prepared detailed explanations of how each would be properly tested and, if necessary, revised. At precisely 9 a.m., Eliza arrived with 2 additional FAA inspectors. Her eyebrows rose slightly when Miriam introduced me as the incoming Executive Director of Safety and Innovation, but she maintained her professional demeanor. We've identified several areas of concern, I said, leading them through our findings. We're not hiding anything. These modifications were approved improperly, and we're taking full responsibility for correcting them. The inspection was thorough and tense. At several points, I thought we might still lose certification despite our preparations. One particular control system modification had progressed further than I realized, potentially affecting handling characteristics. During a brief break, Eliza pulled me aside. You've been busy since yesterday. It's been eventful, I admitted. Are you sure about this? She asked quietly. Taking a leadership role in a company with these issues? I nodded. Someone needs to fix the culture here. It might as well be me. She studied my face. You always were stubborn. Just promise me one thing. If you find more problems, you'll report them properly. not hide them. You have my word. The inspection continued until late afternoon. When it concluded, Eliza didn't immediately announce her decision, instead conferring privately with her team. The waiting was excruciating. Finally, she returned to the conference room where the board, Arthur, and I sat anxiously. Aerodyne has serious procedural issues that must be addressed, she began, her expression stern. However, we acknowledge the company's transparency today and the concrete plans for remediation. Miriam leaned forward. And our certification? Conditional approval, Eliza said, subject to implementing all the corrections we've outlined and submitting to monthly progress reviews for the next 6 months. The relief in the room was palpable. Conditional approval was the best we could have hoped for under the circumstances. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, Arthur approached me. Congratulations, Executive Director. You've accomplished more in 24 hours than most people do in a career. I smiled tiredly. Thanks for speaking up, Arthur. It mattered. I should have done it sooner. He paused. There's something you should know. After the board meeting last night, I overheard Vernon on his phone. He was furious, talking to someone about making her pay once this blows over. My smile faded. You think he'll try to retaliate? Arthur nodded grimly. Vernon doesn't forgive people who cross him, and he still has connections in the industry. Watch your back. As Arthur walked away, I felt the weight of his warning. I'd won this battle decisively, but Vernon was still a powerful man with wounded pride. This might not be over yet. The thought should have frightened me, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. If Vernon wanted to continue this fight, he would learn that I was just getting started. Tomorrow would be my first official day as executive director. The real work of transformation was just beginning, and if Vernon thought today was bad, he had no idea what was coming next. 2 weeks into my new role as executive director of safety and innovation, I was already drowning in the enormity of the task before me. Vernon's influence ran deeper than anyone had realized. Every day brought new discoveries of questionable decisions, abbreviated testing protocols, and unqualified personnel in critical positions. How bad is it? Arthur asked during our daily morning meeting. He'd become an invaluable ally in navigating the company's complex structure. I pushed a stack of reports across my desk. Worse than we thought. The wing design for the military contract? The calculations were fudged to meet the deadline. It's sound enough to fly, but nowhere near the performance metrics we promised. Arthur winced. That contract is worth nearly $100 million. I know, and there's more. I pulled up an email on my screen. 3 of Vernon's appointees in quality control have been approving components that don't meet specifications. They've been marking them as acceptable variances. Have you told the board? I'm presenting a full report tomorrow. They're not going to be happy. Arthur leaned back in his chair, studying me with concern. You look exhausted, Danny. Are you sleeping? I wasn't. Every night brought new anxieties about the magnitude of what I'd undertaken. The responsibility for fixing years of corner cutting and nepotism now rested squarely on my shoulders. Plus, there was Vernon's threat to consider. I'm fine, I lied, just adapting to the new position. After Arthur left, I stared at the mountain of documents on my desk. This wasn't just about my promotion anymore. The safety of pilots, passengers, and military personnel relied on these aircraft performing as promised. Lives were literally at stake. My assistant, Zoe, knocked on my open door. Danny, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. Who is it? A Mr. Tanner from Orion Aerospace. He doesn't have an appointment. I frowned. Orion was our biggest competitor. Show him in. Jordan Tanner was tall with salt and pepper hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. He declined my offer of coffee and got straight to the point. I'll be direct, Miss Keegan. Word has spread about your situation here. I'm authorized to offer you a position at Orion as our head of engineering. Substantial salary increase, full team authority, and none of. He gestured vaguely around him. This mess to clean up. I blinked in surprise. That's unexpected. Is it? You exposed serious problems in a major aerospace company. That took courage and integrity. Those are qualities Orion values. He slid a folder across my desk. All the details are inside. We'd need your answer within the week. After he left, I sat stunned, staring at the folder. The offer was tempting, a clean slate without the uphill battle I now faced. I could walk away from Vernon's looming threat and start fresh. But something felt off about the timing. Later that afternoon, during a meeting with my newly formed safety team, I received a text from an unknown number. Parking garage. Level 3. 5:30 p.m. Come alone if you want to save your career. My pulse quickened. Anonymous messages were never good news. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity and concern won out. If someone had information about more safety issues, I needed to hear it. At 5:30, I cautiously approached level 3 of the parking garage, my phone ready to dial security. The concrete structure was mostly empty. The workday ended for most employees. A figure stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Kyle. I tensed immediately. Vernon's nephew looked different from when I'd last seen him. His designer clothes replaced by casual wear, his confident swagger gone. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice subdued. "What do you want, Kyle?" He glanced nervously around the garage. "I need to warn you. Uncle Vernon is planning something. Something big. I'm already aware he wants revenge." Kyle shook his head. "It's worse than that. He's been making calls to everyone who owes him favors. He arranged that Orion job offer." I frowned. "Why would he want me to go to a competitor?" "Because he's setting you up. If you take it, he has evidence ready to provide to Orion showing you stole proprietary designs. It would destroy your career there before it began." My mind raced. "And if I don't take it?" "Then phase 2 begins. He's gathering statements from people claiming you've been falsifying safety reports to make him look bad. He has someone on your team feeding him information." The betrayal stung. Someone I'd trusted was working against me? "Why are you telling me this, Kyle? You lost your position because of me." His eyes dropped to the ground. "Because I never wanted any of this. Uncle Vernon pushed me into a role I knew I wasn't qualified for. I tried to tell him, but he wouldn't listen. Said it was my birthright to lead at Aerodyne." He looked up, his expression earnest. "I'm actually a decent marketing guy. That's what I studied. But aerospace engineering? I was drowning from day one." I studied his face for signs of deception but saw only genuine distress. "There's something else," Kyle continued. "Uncle Vernon has a meeting tomorrow with 2 board members, Philip and James. They've always been his allies. He's convinced them to call for a vote of no confidence in your leadership." My stomach tightened. "Based on what?" "He's going to claim you've exaggerated the safety issues to justify your promotion, that you're creating a crisis to make yourself look like a savior." I leaned against a nearby car, processing this information. Vernon was moving faster than I'd anticipated. I'd been focused on fixing the company's problems, not defending my position. "Why should I believe you?" I finally asked. Kyle pulled out his phone and played a recording. Vernon's voice discussing exactly the plan he'd just outlined. The evidence was undeniable. "What do you want in exchange for this information?" I asked cautiously. "Nothing. Consider it an apology. I never should have accepted that position." He pocketed his phone. "Just, if things ever settle down, maybe put in a good word for me in marketing. That's where I actually belong." After Kyle left, I sat in my car for nearly an hour, formulating a plan. Vernon was coming for me, and he had allies. I needed to move quickly. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 6 a.m. and immediately called Miriam Ashford. "I need an emergency board meeting today, before the scheduled 2 p.m. session." "That's highly unusual," she replied, sounding concerned. "What's happened?" "Vernon is making his move, and he's turned Philip and James against me. I have evidence they need to hear before they make any decisions." There was a long pause. "I'll arrange it for 10 a.m. That's the earliest I can get everyone together." I spent the next 3 hours preparing my presentation and gathering allies. Arthur agreed to speak on my behalf. 3 engineers from my team volunteered to present their findings on the safety issues. I even reached out to Eliza at the FAA, who provided a statement confirming the legitimacy of our safety concerns. At 9:45, I walked into the boardroom with my team, only to find Vernon already there, looking smugly confident. Philip and James sat beside him, their expressions closed and judgmental. "This is an unexpected development," Vernon said smoothly. "I was under the impression our meeting was at 2 p.m. "Plans change," Miriam replied coolly, taking her seat at the head of the table. "Ms. Keegan has raised concerns that couldn't wait." Vernon's confidence wavered slightly. "What concerns?" I connected my laptop to the projector. "Concerns about a coordinated effort to undermine Aerodyne's new safety protocols and discredit my leadership through false allegations." Vernon's face reddened. "That's absurd. If anyone has fabricated allegations, it's you." "I thought you might say that." I clicked to the first slide, a transcript of Kyle's recording. This is a conversation between you and board members Philip and James from yesterday evening. You'll note the detailed discussion of how to force me out based on claims that I've exaggerated safety issues. Philip and James shifted uncomfortably in their seats. You can't verify that transcript, Vernon snapped. I don't need to. I played the actual recording, Vernon's voice filling the room with damning clarity. Vernon's face went from red to ashen. Where did you get that? Your nephew has a conscience, it seems. For the next hour, I methodically presented evidence of every accusation Vernon had planned to make against me, alongside proof of its falsehood. I showed the board the Orion job offer and explained how it was meant to trap me. When I finished, the boardroom was silent. Vernon stared at the table, defeated for the second time. If these allegations are true, Miriam said slowly, then this represents an attempt to compromise Aerodyne's safety culture and regulatory standing for personal revenge. They're true, I said confidently. And there's more. During our safety audit, we discovered that Vernon has been receiving payments from a component supplier that repeatedly failed to meet specifications but was approved anyway. This was news even to Vernon, whose head snapped up in shock. That's a lie. I never took bribes. Not bribes, I clarified. Consulting fees to a company registered to your wife's maiden name. We found the connection while tracking the component approval chain. Miriam stood abruptly. Vernon, Philip, James, you'll wait outside while the rest of the board discusses this matter privately. The three men filed out, Vernon shooting me a look of pure hatred as he passed. The remaining board members spoke in hushed, urgent tones. I caught fragments, legal implications, regulatory fallout, media exposure. Everyone. After 20 minutes, they called us back in. Vernon, Philip, and James were noticeably subdued. Miriam addressed me first. Miss Keegan, the board extends its apology for this situation. We unanimously reaffirm our confidence in your leadership. Then she turned to Vernon. As for you, the board has decided to refer this matter to legal counsel for potential criminal charges. Your consulting arrangement with our supplier appears to violate both company policy and federal contracting laws. Vernon went completely still. You can't prove intent. Perhaps not, Miriam agreed. But the appearance of impropriety is enough to trigger a federal investigation. Given Aerodyne's government contracts, that would mean the Department of Justice getting involved. Vernon's lawyer, who had arrived during the deliberation, whispered urgently in his ear. The board is prepared to offer you one alternative, Miriam continued. Immediate severance with no benefits, a legally binding non-disclosure agreement, and your commitment to leave the aerospace industry entirely. In exchange, Aerodyne will handle this matter internally. Vernon's shoulders slumped in defeat. I'll take the deal. As Vernon signed the severance agreement, I felt no satisfaction, only relief that this chapter was finally closing. The real victory wasn't personal revenge. It was the opportunity to transform Aerodyne's safety culture and ensure that merit, not connections, determined advancement. 6 months later, Aerodyne passed its FAA follow-up inspection with flying colors. Our military contract was fulfilled with components that exceeded specifications. Kyle found his place in the marketing department, where his actual talents shone, and I assembled a team of the industry's most qualified engineers, many of whom had been previously overlooked due to Vernon's nepotism. The true revenge wasn't destroying Vernon. Sudden. It was building something better from the ruins of his corrupt system. He lost everything that mattered to him, his power, his reputation, his industry standing, and I gained everything I'd worked for, recognition, authority, and the chance to lead with integrity. The night after our successful FAA inspection, Eliza raised a toast at our celebration dinner. To Danny, who taught us all that standing up for what's right isn't just good ethics, it's good business. As applause filled the room, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. One moment of courage had changed everything, not just for me, but for hundreds of employees and thousands of people who would fly safely in our aircraft. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you destroy, but what you build in its place. If this story resonated with you, please tap that like button and subscribe for more real stories about standing up against workplace injustice. Have you ever had to take a stand against unfair treatment at work? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else to find their courage. You're fired. Enjoy your vacation. The text blazed on my screen, the tropical sun suddenly feeling like a spotlight on my humiliation. 5 years of dedication reduced to a 2-sentence dismissal. sent when I was 3,000 miles away with sand between my toes. I reread it 3 times, my margarita turning warm in my frozen grip. I'd been expecting this, just not like this. Not from the entitled 27-year-old who'd been handed the keys to the kingdom 8 months ago, while I'd built that kingdom brick by brick for half a decade. "Everything okay?" asked the cabana attendant, noticing my expression. I looked up with a smile I didn't feel. Just business. Just business. But it wasn't just business. It was personal. It was calculated. And it was the biggest mistake Theo would ever make, because while he might be the boss's son, I was the woman who'd built the client list that kept that luxury destination wedding company thriving. I was the reason celebrities whispered our name when they wanted impossible wedding dreams fulfilled. I was the reason the richest people in the country waited months for our availability, and he'd just fired me via text. During the first vacation I'd taken in 3 years, I put my phone face down, took a deep breath of salt air, and made 3 phone calls that would change everything. By Monday morning, Theo had 47 missed calls and one very angry father, who suddenly realized exactly what his son had done and exactly who I was. I should have felt vindicated. But revenge isn't a lightning strike. It's a slow burn, and I was just getting started. Hey, if you're enjoying this wild ride, you wouldn't believe how it all unfolds. Hit like and subscribe for the next chapter, and leave a comment with what you think Theo's father said when he realized what his son had done. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. My name is Daria, and until that text message, I was the senior event coordinator at what was considered the most exclusive destination wedding planning service in the country. I'm methodical, detail-oriented, and I remember everything, including every slight, every dismissal, and every promise broken. When people first meet me, they see someone warm, accommodating, and endlessly patient. Perfect qualities for someone who organizes events where emotions run high and expectations run higher. What they don't see is the steel beneath the smile, the calculations behind the charm. I built my reputation on making impossible things happen. The time I sourced 40 white peacocks with 3 days' notice. The hurricane I rerouted an entire wedding around without the guests ever suspecting. The celebrity couple who wanted their ceremony at sunrise on a mountain that was legally impossible to access. Until I found the one permit exception that had never been used. I was the miracle worker, the problem solver. The person who made rich people feel seen, understood, and catered to in ways that justified our astronomical fees. And then Giles, the company's founder, brought in his son. "Theo has fresh ideas," Giles had announced at the staff meeting, his hand proudly on his son's shoulder. "He'll be our new vice president of innovation," a title that hadn't existed until that moment. A position created purely for someone whose resume consisted primarily of dropping out of business school and finding himself across Europe for 3 years. I still remember Theo's first day. He wore sneakers that cost more than my monthly rent to a meeting with a banking magnate's daughter who noticed immediately and spent the rest of the consultation directing all questions to me. "You need to loosen up, Daria," he told me afterward, leaning against my desk uninvited. "These clients want to feel like they're working with friends, not servants." "These clients," I replied without looking up from my notes, "are paying us 6 figures because they specifically don't want to burden their friends with their demands. They want professionals who understand what luxury actually means." The look he gave me, part contempt, part challenge, should have warned me of what was coming. Within weeks, he was sitting in on my client meetings, contradicting my suggestions in front of people who'd specifically requested me based on my reputation. "Crystal champagne flutes are overdone," he'd interrupt. "Have you considered biodegradable options? Much more current." I'd watch my clients' expressions shift from confusion to concern, forced to smoothly redirect. Theo brings an interesting perspective. Now, about the hand-calligraphed place cards you mentioned. After meetings, he'd corner his father. "Daria seems stuck in outdated approaches. These modern clients want innovation." What followed was months of quiet undermining. Decisions reversed after I'd left the room. Emails to clients where he'd copy everyone except me. Draft proposals rewritten with his improvements, that missed crucial details only experience would have caught. The breaking point came with the Lane wedding, a 2.3 million celebration for the daughter of a technology investor, scheduled for a private island buyout. Camille Line had requested me specifically after I'd planned her sister's wedding the previous year. "I'll be taking point on the Lane event," Theo announced one morning, dropping the bombshell in front of the entire team. I kept my voice level. Camille specifically asked for me. Her family is particular about personal connections. "She asked for our company," Theo corrected, smiling with teeth too white to be natural. "Nobody is irreplaceable, Daria. Dad agrees it's time I handled our premium clients." I looked to Giles, waiting for him to correct this overreach. Instead, he nodded, avoiding my eyes. "Theo should get experience with our top-tier events. You've been working too hard anyway, Daria. This vacation you've planned. First in how long? 3 years," I said quietly. "Exactly. Nobody should wait that long between breaks. Theo will cover the Lane preliminary meetings while you're away, and you can pick back up when you return." I should have seen it then. The exchange of glances between father and son, the slight smile on Theo's face, the way Giles suddenly became very interested in his coffee. I'd planned that vacation meticulously. 10 days at a boutique resort known for privacy and discretion. No work calls, no emails, nothing but sun and silence to recharge after years of 4 a.m. crisis management and 16-hour wedding days. "Everything's handled," Theo had assured his father, almost too eagerly, 3 days before my departure. Daria deserves the break, which brings us back to that text. To the betrayal delivered while I sat on pristine white sand, halfway through my second margarita. To the moment everything changed. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I simply set down my drink, opened my contacts, and made my first call to Camille Lane herself. "Camille? It's Daria. I'm actually calling with some news. I wanted to let you know personally that I won't be handling your wedding after all." The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds before Camille's voice came through, sharp with surprise. "What? Why not?" "Company restructuring," I said simply, offering no criticism, no details. Another pause. "Does this mean we'll be working with Theo?" Her tone made the name sound like something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. "That's my understanding. The one who suggested we replace the welcome dinner with a digital greeting and gift cards?" "The very same." The wind rustled through palm trees above me as Camille went quiet again. "Then, if you're not handling my wedding, then I don't want your company handling it either. Period." My second call went to my assistant, Priya, who'd been with me for 3 years and knew every client as well as I did. "He did what?" she gasped when I told her. "But the Rivera wedding is next weekend. And the charity gala for the governor's wife. He has no idea how to handle those." "Not our problem anymore," I said calmly. The third call went to Jasper, a wealthy hotel magnate who'd spent years trying to recruit me to launch an exclusive planning division for his luxury chain. "Is that standing offer still available?" I asked. "For you?" "Always," came the immediate response. "What changed your mind?" Let's just say my calendar suddenly opened up. I switched my phone to silent, ordered another drink, and watched the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. For the first time in years, I felt something unexpected. Freedom. Little did I know that back home, the first dominoes were already falling. The damage had only just begun. When my flight landed 6 days later, my phone lit up with notifications like a slot machine hitting jackpot. I scrolled through them in the taxi, a small smile playing at my lips. 12 missed calls from Theo, 23 from Giles, frantic texts from former colleagues, 3 voicemails from Priya detailing the chaos unfolding in real time. Camille Lane hadn't just pulled her wedding. She'd told her 4 closest friends, all with upcoming engagements, exactly why. The Rivera family, whose daughter's wedding was scheduled for that weekend, had demanded an emergency meeting after Theo failed to recognize them at a pre-event dinner. The governor's wife was reconsidering options after learning I wouldn't be handling her charity gala. I checked into my hotel, not going home, felt important somehow, like I was physically as well as professionally, starting fresh. and changed into the outfit I'd selected for my meeting with Jasper. As I applied lipstick, my phone lit up with Giles's number. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Whatever he's paying, I'll double it," Giles said without preamble, voice tight with panic. "Hello to you too," I replied, keeping my tone light. "Daria, please. This is serious. The Lene wedding / pace is no longer my concern." The Riveras barely let Theo through the door. The daughter cried when she realized you wouldn't be there for her final fitting. "You have relationships with these people. They trust you." I examined my reflection in the mirror, adjusting an earring. "That's the thing about trust, Giles. Once broken, it's nearly impossible to repair." A heavy sigh came through the line. "My son made a terrible mistake. He's young, impulsive. He didn't understand what he was doing." "No," I corrected, steel entering my voice. "You made the mistake. You placed nepotism above merit. You watched him undermine me for months and did nothing. You allowed him to fire your most valuable employee via text during her first vacation in 3 years." Silence stretched between us. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its commanding edge. "Please, the heiress is threatening to tell everyone why she canceled. The Riveras want their deposit back. The charity board is furious." "Sounds challenging," I said, checking my watch. "Good luck with that. I have a meeting to attend." I ended the call and switched my phone to silent. The revenge wasn't in what I was about to do. It wasn't what I'd already done, simply by stepping away and letting them feel my absence. Jasper's downtown office occupied the top floor of his flagship hotel, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He greeted me with a warm handshake and genuine smile. "I've waited 3 years to have this conversation," he said, gesturing to a seating area where coffee waited. Though I admit I never expected it to happen quite like this. I settled into a chair. "Neither did I. Their loss is very much my gain. Tell me what you need to build your dream team." Esco. We spent 2 hours outlining my vision for an ultra-exclusive planning division. By the time I left, I had a contract that tripled my previous salary, complete autonomy over hiring, and a suite at the hotel until I found a new apartment. As I rode the elevator down, I checked my phone to find 17 new notifications. I ignored them all except one. A text from Priya. "Can we talk? Coffee tomorrow?" The next morning, Priya arrived at our meeting spot with dark circles under her eyes and a resignation letter in her bag. "It's a disaster," she said, stirring her latte absently. "Theo's running around like his hair's on fire. The Rivera wedding was painful to watch. He addressed the mother of the bride by the wrong name. Twice." I sipped my coffee, letting her continue. "Giles came back yesterday. He's been calling clients personally, trying to smooth things over. But the Andersons already contacted a competitor. And the Winstons." She trailed off, wincing. "What about the Winstons?" I asked, genuinely curious. Cecilia Winston was planning her daughter's Sweet 16, a modest event by our standards but important to her. Theo told them their budget was too small to warrant priority attention. Suggested they try a more accessible planning service. I nearly choked on my coffee. The Winstons owned half the commercial real estate in the financial district. He didn't. He did. Right after telling them their color scheme was basic. I shook my head, picturing Cecilia's reaction. She'd once changed caterers because someone suggested her taste in wine was safe. "So," I said, nodding toward her bag. "The letter?" Priya pulled out the envelope. "I can't stay there. Not with him running things into the ground." She hesitated. "I don't suppose." I smiled. "Jasper approved my hiring budget yesterday. You'd be my first call." Relief flooded her face. "When do we start?" "How's tomorrow?" 3 weeks later, we had an office space on the hotel's executive level. 4 additional team members, poached from top planning agencies, and inquiries from 32 potential clients, 15 of whom had previously worked with my former company. I was reviewing design proposals when my assistant, not Priya, who'd been promoted to associate planner, buzzed me. "Giles is here. No appointment." I considered sending him away, but curiosity won out. Give me 5 minutes, then show him in. When Giles entered, the change was shocking. His normally immaculate appearance had slipped, tie slightly askew, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. He looked like he'd aged a decade in less than a month. You look terrible, I said bluntly, not offering him a seat. He stood awkwardly, hands shoved in his pockets. We've lost 40% of our bookings. The lane cancellation made the industry newsletter. 3 employees resigned this week. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? He looked at me directly. You built a competing business in record time and took our best people. I built a new business, I corrected, with people who value talent over connections, who recognize hard work deserves respect, not a dismissal text. He flinched at that. I've come to make you an offer, a partnership, equal share, your name on the company alongside mine. I laughed, the sound sharp and genuine. Alongside yours and Theo's, you mean? No, thank you. Theo's no longer involved in operations. He's taking some time to reassess his career goals. Translation: Daddy put him in timeout after he burned down the family business. The offer's generous, I acknowledged, but 3 weeks ago, it might have meant something. Now, I'm building something that's truly mine, something where I'll never be disposable. Giles nodded slowly, his expression resigned. I understand. But if you change your mind, I won't. I gestured toward the door. Best of luck rebuilding. After he left, I turned to the window, watching pedestrians on the street below. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel the satisfaction of having proven my worth in the most definitive way possible, by my absence. But there was still work to do. My phone chimed with a text from Camille Line. Heard you're back in business. I still need a wedding planner who isn't completely useless. Dinner tonight to discuss? I smiled. Sometimes, revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about rebuilding yourself into something stronger than before. 2 months later, we handled our first major event, a charity gala for the governor's wife, who'd canceled with my former employer the day after learning of my departure. The evening was flawless, from the hand-calligraphed place cards to the custom lighting that made everyone look 10 years younger. As guests mingled during cocktail hour, I felt a tap on my shoulder and turned to find Theo, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo that somehow seemed both too tight and too loose. Didn't expect to see you here, I said, genuinely surprised. He shifted his weight, eyes darting around the room. Dad's friends with the governor. Couldn't really say no. He hesitated, then added, Nice event. Thank you. Look, Daria, I need to check on the dinner service. I interrupted, not interested in whatever half-formed apology he might offer. He reached for my arm but thought better of it when I raised an eyebrow. I didn't realize what you actually did until you stopped doing it. Dad's had to delay retirement. We've lost half our bookings. 3 planners quit to join you. 4, actually, I corrected. Mira gave notice yesterday. He winced. Right. If there's nothing else, was it worth it? Destroying what your mentor built? The question caught me off guard. I didn't destroy anything, Theo. You did that yourself when you decided I was disposable. I simply moved on. As I walked away, I heard him mutter, Could have just quit like a normal person. I turned back. I didn't quit. I was fired, via text, during my vacation. Each phrase punctuated with a step toward him until I was close enough to keep my voice low. And for future reference, never confuse someone's silence for weakness. Sometimes, it's just them giving you enough rope to hang yourself. I left him standing there and continued with my evening, directing servers, soothing a speaker's nerves, ensuring the surprise performer arrived undetected. But his question lingered. Was it worth it? The answer came 3 weeks later, when Jasper called me into his office, beaming as he pushed a folder across his desk. Quarterly numbers, he said. Your division has brought in more revenue in 3 months than our previous planning department did all last year. The board is thrilled. I flipped through the report, satisfaction warming my chest. And this is just the beginning. They've approved the expansion plan. Additional staff, satellite office in the Hamptons property, everything you asked for. I closed the folder. Perfect timing. We just confirmed the Line A wedding. Fully rescheduled with us. It'll be our biggest event yet. Excellent. He paused, studying me. You know, when you first joined us, I wondered if this was just about getting back at your old company. And now? Now I see it's about proving something to yourself. He smiled. Though I imagine the revenge aspect doesn't hurt. I returned his smile. Let's just say it's been a satisfying bonus. That evening, I walked along the waterfront near my new apartment, phone buzzing in my pocket, another call from Giles. The third this week, I let it go to voicemail. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ahead, a young couple took photos of the sunset, laughing as they tried to capture the perfect shot. My phone buzzed again. Not Giles this time, but Camille Lane with a question about floral arrangements. I answered, smiling as I discussed the merits of garden roses versus peonies. This was what I'd built. Not just a business, but a reputation, trust, relationships that survived because they were based on respect and delivered promises. As I ended the call, a notification appeared. An industry newsletter with the headline, Luxury Wedding Pioneer, Giles announces merger after difficult quarter. I clicked the link, reading quickly. My former company was being absorbed by a larger corporate entity. Giles would stay on as a consultant for 6 months before full retirement. The article didn't mention Theo. Standing there with the dying sun warming my face, I realized that true victory wasn't in watching others fall phase. It was in rising so high they became irrelevant. But the story wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot, because Theo had made one critical mistake beyond firing me. One I hadn't addressed. One that would prove far more costly than lost clients or revenue, and he was about to discover exactly what it was. The quarterly meeting of the Regional Luxury Events Association was held at the Grand, Jasper's flagship hotel. Fitting, since my division had just been named Newcomer of the Year by the industry's leading publication. I mingled with peers and potential clients, accepting congratulations with practiced humility. 6 months of meteoric growth had transformed me from a respected planner into something of an industry legend, the woman who walked away from the top firm and built something even better from scratch. Is it true the governor's daughter just booked with you? Asked a planner from a competing agency. Champagne flute clutched a little too tightly. We don't discuss client bookings before official announcements, I replied smoothly. Spotting Priya signaling me from across the room. If you'll excuse me, Priya pulled me into a quiet corner, eyes bright with excitement. Giles just arrived. With Theo. I raised an eyebrow. Bold choice. Everyone's whispering about it. First industry event they've attended since the merger announcement. I glanced toward the entrance where Giles was shaking hands with the association president. Theo hovering awkwardly beside him. Gone was the cocky posture, replaced with something more subdued. The past 6 months had clearly taken their toll. Any word on what's happening with them post-merger? I asked. Priya lowered her voice. Rumor is Giles got significantly less than the company was worth pre-Exodus. The acquirers keeping the client list but dropping the brand name entirely. And Theo, yes? Word is he's being cut loose completely. No role in the new structure. Gad, I nodded, absorbing this information. Make sure the team is extra polite if they interact with either of them tonight. We're professionals, not gloaters. Of course. Priya agreed, then hesitated. There's something else. Mina from legal wants 5 minutes with you. Says it's important. Mina was our newly hired legal counsel, poached from a top firm specializing in contract law. I found her waiting in a small conference room off the main event space. Sorry to pull you away, she said, closing the door behind us. But you need to see this immediately. She handed me a folder containing what appeared to be financial documents. Remember how you asked me to review the severance terms you never received? I did some digging. I scanned the pages, my eyes widening. Is this verified? Triple-checked. The client deposit accounts were accessed the day you were fired. $3 million moved to an account under the new parent company's name. But this was a full month before merger talks began. So Theo was siphoning client deposits and possibly committing fraud. Yes. The timing suggests he needed to show improved liquidity to make the company attractive for acquisition. I sat back, pieces falling into place, the rushed firing, the timing during my vacation when I couldn't access the financial systems, the panic when clients began withdrawing their deposits. What would happen if this information became public? I asked carefully. Criminal charges, potentially. Certainly civil liability. At minimum, the merger would be jeopardized. Mina adjusted her glasses. The question is, what do you want to do with this information? I considered my options, mentally calculating the potential outcomes. Let me think about this. For now, secure the evidence. Already done, Mina assured me. Everything's backed up and time-stamped. I returned to the event, scanning the room until I spotted Theo alone at the bar, nursing what appeared to be scotch. Giles was across the room, deep in conversation with potential investors. I slid onto the stool beside Theo. Drink for a dying company? He startled, nearly spilling his glass. Daria, congratulations on your award. Thank you, I signaled the bartender. Gin and tonic, please. Theo shifted uncomfortably. I assume you're enjoying all this. All what? Watching us crumble. Knowing you caused it, I accepted my drink, taking a deliberate sip before responding. I didn't cause anything, Theo. Actions have consequences. You fired the person who built your client relationships without understanding what she actually did. The aftermath was entirely predictable. It wasn't personal. He muttered. Just business. Sending a termination text during someone's first vacation in 3 years feels rather personal. He stared into his glass. Dad's retiring after the merger. Moving to Arizona. The company name dies with the acquisition. I heard. And I'm... He swallowed hard, out completely. No place in the new structure. I also heard that. You must be thrilled. I studied him for a moment. You know what's interesting about revenge, Theo? It's rarely as satisfying as people think it will be. He looked up, surprised. Don't misunderstand, I continued. I've enjoyed building my new division. I'm proud of what we've accomplished. But your downfall? That was collateral damage, not my objective. Then what was your objective? To prove something to myself. That my value wasn't dependent on your father's company. That clients chose me for my skills, not just the brand name. Well, mission accomplished, he said bitterly. I finished my drink and stood. One question before I go. The client deposits. Did you really think no one would notice? The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? And so, $3 million, Theo, moved the day you fired me. To an account under the name of a company that wasn't even in acquisition talks yet. His glass froze halfway to his lips. How did you... I build relationships, remember? Including with people who handle financial oversight for luxury events. I leaned closer. That was your real mistake. Not firing me, that just got you bad press and lost clients. But financial fraud, that gets people prison time. It wasn't... I was gonna put it back, he stammered. Save it for the investigators. I straightened up. I'm meeting with the merger company's CEO tomorrow morning. They should know what they're really acquiring. Daria, please, panic edged his voice. You can't. The merger's the only thing saving what's left of Dad's legacy. You should have thought about your father's legacy before you started moving money around. I checked my watch. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to congratulate my team. I walked away, leaving him pale and shaking at the bar. Across the room, I caught Giles watching our interaction, brow furrowed with concern. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Need to speak with you urgently. Outside on the terrace. Theo. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won out. I found him pacing beside a decorative fountain, hands shoved in his pockets. 5 minutes, I said. I have guests to attend to. I'll make it quick. He ran a hand through his hair. What do you want? Excuse me? To keep this quiet. What do you want? Money? A public apology? I laughed, the sound echoing off the marble terrace. You still don't get it. This isn't a negotiation. Everything's a negotiation, he insisted. Name your price. My price was paid 6 months ago when I walked away and built something better. I turned to leave. Wait. He stepped forward. This will destroy my father. He doesn't know anything about the accounts. It was all me. He's already lost so much. I paused, considering this. That's the problem with nepotism, Theo. Parents end up paying for their children's mistakes. Please, he whispered. And for the first time, I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. I'll do anything. 3 days later, I sat across from Jasper in his office, sliding a document across his desk. What's this? He asked, scanning the first page. An opportunity. Giles's company acquisition is being restructured. The parent company is divesting the planning division entirely. Jasper looked up sharply. And they're offering it to us at a significant discount. Client list, vendor relationships, everything except the brand name. What prompted this sudden change? I smiled. Let's just say certain information came to light that made the original terms problematic. Information you provided? Information that became available to the right people at the right time. Jasper studied me. And what happens to Giles and his son in this scenario? Giles retires with his reputation and a modest payout. Theo, I paused. Theo will be taking a position with a small event planning firm in Alaska. Very small, very remote. His choice was that or legal consequences. Your idea? His actually. When backed into a corner, he finally made one good decision, removing himself from an industry he nearly destroyed. Jasper leaned back, impressed. Remind me never to cross you, Daria. So, I prefer collaboration to conflict, I said mildly. But I do believe in accountability. The acquisition was announced 2 weeks later. The press release mentioned Giles's well-earned retirement and the exciting combination of industry veterans and innovative newcomers. No mention of Theo. On the day we officially absorbed the remaining assets of my former employer, a delivery arrived at my office. A single potted orchid with a note, "Thank you for allowing me some dignity in defeat, Giles." I placed the orchid on my windowsill and turned back to my desk, where plans for the governor's daughter's wedding awaited my attention. The revenge that had once consumed my thoughts now felt distant, like a story about someone else. My phone chimed with an incoming call, Camille Lane, with questions about her upcoming wedding. As I answered, I glanced at the orchid one last time. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so magnificent that their absence becomes irrelevant. And then, when they're at their most vulnerable, showing just enough mercy to remind them exactly who has the power. The final victory isn't in making them suffer, it's in making them understand. If you've made it this far in my story, you know what it means to rise from betrayal stronger than before. I'd love to hear about a time when someone underestimated you and lived to regret it. Drop a comment below and share your own revenge success story. And if you want more tales of professional comebacks, sweet karma, hit that subscribe button. Remember, sometimes the best response to "you're fired" is simply, "watch me thrive." I pushed open the door to conference room B instead of A and froze. 5 people in expensive suits looked up simultaneously from medical charts spread across a glass table. My heart slammed against my ribs as I realized my mistake. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, backing away. "Wrong room." "Actually," the oldest woman said, her silver-streaked hair cut in a sharp bob that matched her calculating gaze. "Stay." She gestured to an empty chair while the other 4 executives exchanged silent glances. The beige conference room, with its windowless walls, seemed to shrink around me. "We need someone with your background," she continued, closing a folder marked confidential. "Community health analysis, correct? Annette mentioned your work." My mouth went dry. I'd been with the company barely 6 months. The youngest executive, a man with blindingly white teeth and manicured nails, tapped his tablet. "Your research mapping treatment outcomes in lower-income neighborhoods is exactly what we need." I slid into the offered chair, confusion mingling with rising dread. The table displayed medical charts, demographic maps, and spreadsheets with highlighted dollar amounts in the millions. "This stays in this room," the silver-haired woman said. "We've developed an algorithm that identifies which insurance claims to strategically deny." The man beside her nodded. "Early-stage treatments in specific neighborhoods. Nothing immediately life-threatening." By the time conditions progress to qualify for mandatory coverage," another woman added, "we've saved millions in preventative care costs." I stared at them, struggling to mask my horror. "And the patients?" The silver-haired woman shrugged. "Treatment is still available once their condition meets critical thresholds. The beauty is regulatory oversight only tracks denials that result in fatalities within a specific time frame." The youngest man leaned forward. "50 million in performance bonuses once fully implemented. Split between us." I nodded mechanically, my eyes drawn to a familiar pattern on one of the charts. The demographic markers, denial sequences, treatment gaps, they matched exactly what happened to Lizzie 3 years ago. My childhood best friend, her early-stage treatment denied. By the time her symptoms qualified for coverage, aggressive intervention came too late. They didn't know I held her hand during her final hours. The silver-haired woman misinterpreted my silence as hesitation. "You're perfect for this team. Your community health background helps us predict which denial patterns will escape attention." I swallowed hard. "I have ideas to improve your system." The words tasted like poison, but the silver-haired woman smiled. "Excellent. Welcome aboard, Miss K," I answered, forcing a smile that concealed the rage building inside me. "Mira K." If you've ever had that moment where you discovered something that changed everything about your life, hit that like button and subscribe to hear stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last word. I never planned to become a spy. Before that meeting, I was just Mira, the quiet data analyst who brought homemade cookies to office potlucks and spent weekends hiking with my rescue dog, Pepper. 32 years old with an apartment full of plants and a degree in public health that had landed me a respectable job at a healthcare analytics firm. People always described me as careful, methodical, the one who color-coded her calendar and triple-checked restaurant bills. My mother called it being responsible. My ex called it being boring before he left for someone more spontaneous. But being careful meant I noticed patterns others missed. It meant I remembered details that seemed insignificant until they weren't. Like how Lizzie's insurance denial letters all came on Tuesdays. How her appeals disappeared into administrative black holes. How the customer service representatives read from identical scripts when I called on her behalf while she grew too weak to hold the phone. What these executives didn't know was that I hadn't joined their company by accident. After Lizzie died, I spent months tracking the insurance denials that killed her. The trail led to this firm, with its sterile hallways and mission statement about optimizing healthcare resource allocation. I applied, waited, prepared, but I never expected to stumble directly into the architects of the system that took her from me. Now, sitting among them with their expensive watches and casual cruelty, I realized my careful nature had finally found its purpose. They thought they were recruiting an analyst. They had no idea they'd just invited in their destruction. Lizzie and I met in 3rd grade when she shared her lunch after bullies tossed mine into a puddle. For 20 years after that, she remained the brightest part of my life, the friend who knew all my secrets, who stayed up all night when my father died, who convinced me to apply to college when I was ready to give up. She was a kindergarten teacher with a laugh that made strangers smile and a habit of adopting stray animals. "The broken ones need us most," she'd say, nursing yet another 3-legged cat or blind guinea pig back to health. The headache started 3 summers ago, mild at first, then persistent enough for a doctor's visit. The initial diagnosis suggested early-stage treatment, expensive, but effective. Her insurance denied it as experimental. We appealed. They denied again, recommending standard observation protocols. While we navigated paperwork labyrinths, the headaches worsened. Vision changes followed. By the time her symptoms qualified for the approved treatment pathway, the tumor had grown. I spent her final weeks sleeping in a hospital chair, watching machines monitor her decline. The night before she died, during a rare moment of clarity, she squeezed my hand. "Promise you'll still find joy," she whispered. I promised, not knowing how I could keep it. After the funeral, I requested her complete medical records. The hospital was reluctant, but eventually relented to my persistence. I created a timeline of every denial, every appeal, every delayed approval. Patterns emerged. This wasn't random bureaucratic cruelty, it was systematic, algorithmic. I tracked similar cases, mapping denial clusters against demographic data. The evidence pointed to a deliberate strategy. The healthcare analytics firm that created these patterns hired me 6 months ago. I arrived with a fabricated resume, highlighting my data skills while concealing my connection to Lizzie. Every day I smiled at people who never knew I spent nights constructing a case against their company. And now, through a mistaken door, I'd found the architects themselves. 5 people who spoke about preventable suffering as cost optimization, who never saw the kindergartners making get-well cards for their absent teacher, who never held someone's hand while they struggled to remember your name after 20 years of friendship. The silver-haired woman, Gloria, was clearly their leader. The youngest man, Drake, handled the technological implementation. The others, Vince, Penny, and Tomas, managed regulatory compliance, financial projections, and medical oversight respectively. They operated as a closed unit, keeping their projects secret even within the company. They called it the Threshold Initiative. I called it murder by spreadsheet. For 5 months, I became essential to their operation. Each day required a perfect performance, enthusiastic enough to earn their trust, restrained enough to appear professional. I suggested enhancements to their system, subtle modifications that created traceable patterns while appearing to improve efficiency. I guided which patient groups to target while secretly documenting every decision. Weekends, I volunteered at community clinics, identifying patients affected by similar denial patterns. My apartment wall transformed into an investigation board hidden behind a curtain. Each night I added to my shadow database tracking every case, creating a comprehensive map of their operation. The close calls accumulated. Once, Gloria questioned why I needed access to historical data. Establishing baselines, I explained, maintaining eye contact despite my racing pulse. We need to understand normal denial rates to avoid patterns that might trigger regulatory attention. She studied me for uncomfortably long seconds before nodding. Smart, I knew you were the right addition. Another time, Tomas, their tech specialist, nearly discovered my hidden code during a system review. What's this subroutine? He asked, pointing to a section of code I'd written to extract data. My mouth dried instantly. That's the custom filter for demographic variables, I said, reaching over to scroll to another section. But I'm more concerned about this security vulnerability. Anyone with basic access could potentially view the executive summary reports. His attention successfully diverted to the genuine flaw I'd identified. My extraction code remained undiscovered. The hardest moments came during their casual lunch conversations, listening to them joke about creative resource allocation while I remembered Lizzie's funeral, watching them calculate bonus distributions while I calculated how many patients would suffer under their system. Some nights, running calculations on my potential share of their promised $50 million, I considered taking the money and helping affected patients directly. With that much, I could fund an entire clinic. But it wouldn't stop the system they were building, a system designed to replicate across other insurance providers. Everything hinged on the handoff meeting, when they would transfer their completed system to insurance company partners. I had volunteered to create the transition protocol, and they had eagerly agreed, impressed by my attention to detail. This implementation will define healthcare cost management for decades, Gloria told me, her hand resting briefly on my shoulder. You'll never have to worry about money again. I smiled back. I'm counting on it. The night before the handoff, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at Lizzie's photo. I found a way, I whispered to her image. But it's not what you would have chosen. My phone chimed with a text from Drake. Last chance to back out, Mira. Once tomorrow happens, we're all committed. I stared at his message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. What I planned risked everything. My career, possibly my freedom. If I failed, they would destroy me professionally, and maybe worse. I thought of Lizzie's last coherent words to me. Promise you'll still find joy. I texted back, I'm all in. The morning arrived clear and cold. I dressed carefully in a charcoal suit that cost a month's salary, an investment in appearing as polished as the others. My entire plan depended on maintaining absolute composure for exactly 90 minutes. I arrived early to prepare the conference room, setting up the presentation materials and checking my hidden programs one final time. A last-minute code adjustment, a triple check of my emergency backup. Gloria arrived first, immaculate in designer navy, diamond earrings catching the light. Nervous? She asked, noticing my tight grip on my tablet. Excited, I corrected, forcing relaxation into my shoulders. This is what we've worked for. She smiled, patting my arm. You've exceeded every expectation, Mira. I've already spoken to the board about creating a permanent position for you on the executive team. The others filtered in, followed by representatives from 3 major insurance companies. Introductions circled the room: senior vice presidents, chief medical officers, legal counsel. Gloria introduced me with understated pride. Our data architect, she called me, the final piece that made our system truly exceptional. The insurance executives nodded politely, unaware that I had spent the night ensuring their companies would never implement the system they came to purchase. As Gloria began her opening remarks, I connected my tablet to the main presentation screen. My pulse thundered in my ears as I navigated to the presentation file. Everything, my revenge, my promise to Lizzie, justice for thousands of patients, depended on what happened in the next 20 minutes. I clicked open the file, and for a terrible second, nothing happened. The screen remained blank. Then the screen flickered to life. My custom presentation loaded, showing the innocent-looking dashboard Gloria and the team had approved. The faces around the table relaxed. I steadied my breathing. The Threshold Initiative represents a breakthrough in claims management, I began, reciting the practiced words while my thumb hovered over the hidden command on my tablet. As you'll see in this demonstration, we've created a system that identifies optimal denial pathways while maintaining regulatory compliance. I walked the executives through the surface features, watching their eyes light up at projected savings. Numbers scrolled across the screen, millions in avoided costs, each dollar representing a real person denied care that could prevent suffering. The key innovation, I continued, is how the system remains undetectable to oversight agencies. Drake nodded enthusiastically from across the table. Show them the demographic sequencing, Mira. This was the moment. I tapped a sequence on my tablet that looked like a standard navigation gesture but activated my hidden program. The system includes an automatic oversight function, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The screen transformed, displaying a different interface than what my team had ever seen. It identifies denial patterns and flags potential discrimination. Before anyone could react, the screens around the room filled with thousands of actual patient cases, all connected to test versions of their system, already quietly implemented in select markets over the past 3 months. Gloria half rose from her chair. "This isn't the approved presentation," she hissed. I continued as if I hadn't heard her. "This oversight function has been running for months, documenting every denied claim, every patient outcome, and every executive decision." The insurance executives exchanged alarmed glances. One opened his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. "What you're seeing," I explained, "is the actual impact of denials already implemented in test markets. Not theoretical projections, real patients." I clicked to the next screen. Patient 4,372. Denied preventative treatment last quarter. Current status. Hospitalized with advanced symptoms. Projected cost difference. $246,000 in additional treatment. Patient 5,980. 1. Single mother. Denied early intervention. Current status. Disability leave. Unable to work. 3 dependents, now receiving state assistance. Drake lunged toward the main computer station, but stopped when I added, "The system doesn't just track past decisions, it predicts outcomes. Like which executives will be implicated when patients suffer, whose career will survive, and what partnering with these people will cost you in lawsuits and penalties." I clicked again. The screen showed the 5 executives' names, alongside predicted financial penalties based on existing case law. The numbers were staggering. "This data has been backed up to secure servers," I said calmly. "The complete analysis has also been scheduled for delivery to regulatory agencies and select journalists if tampering is detected." One by one, the insurance executives closed their laptops. The oldest among them, a man with steel gray hair, stood up. "This meeting is over," he announced. "Our company will not be pursuing this partnership." The others followed, murmuring about legal exposure and reputation management. No one made eye contact with Gloria or her team as they filed out. The door closed, leaving me alone with 5 people whose careers I had just destroyed. Gloria's face transformed with rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yes," I said simply. "I've shown them exactly what you planned to do." Drake grabbed my arm, Where's the real presentation? Fix this now and maybe we can salvage. There is no other presentation, I said, pulling away from his grip. This is the real system, the one you've been testing for months. Penny's face had gone pale. Testing? We haven't implemented anything yet. You didn't, I agreed. But I did. Those pilot programs you authorized in 3 markets? I modified them to track every outcome, every patient affected, every dollar saved at the expense of human suffering. Their phones began ringing simultaneously. Board members, legal counsel, supervisors from every level suddenly aware something had gone catastrophically wrong. The silver-haired woman who'd first invited me to stay grabbed my arm as I moved toward the door. You could have changed your life with that money. $50 million. I thought of Lizzie's hand in mine as the monitors flatlined. I just did. I walked out, leaving behind their systems still running on screens, now calculating the precise financial cost of their collapsing scheme. No dramatic arrests, no public showdown. Just the cold math of consequences, turning their own weapon against them. In the elevator, my legs finally began to shake. 3 years of grief, 6 months of planning. It was done. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Smart play, need to talk. Central Park, Bethesda Fountain, 1 hour. I stared at the message, wondering which of the insurance executives had sent it. This wasn't part of my plan. I had expected to clean out my desk and disappear before the full fallout began. But curiosity, the same trait that had helped me unravel their scheme, won out. Who is this? I texted back. The reply came instantly. Someone who knows about Lizzie Adams. My blood froze. I had never mentioned Lizzie to anyone at the company. Her connection to me wasn't in any public record. I had been meticulously careful. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Security guards stood near the entrance, but they weren't looking for me yet. I walked past them, fighting the urge to run. Outside, autumn air hit my face. I had imagined this moment differently, a sense of triumph, perhaps, or at least relief. Instead, fear crawled up my spine. Someone knew about Lizzie. Someone knew why I'd done this. I hailed a cab to Central Park, checking constantly for followers. The fountain area was busy with tourists taking photos and children chasing pigeons. I found an empty bench with a clear view of all approaching paths and waited. 15 minutes passed. My phone remained silent. No mysterious strangers approached. Then a woman sat beside me. She wore a simple gray coat and carried a coffee cup, mid-40s, with short brown hair and unremarkable features. Nothing about her screamed corporate or executive. Mira Kay, she said, not looking at me but watching the fountain. Or should I say, Mira Collins. You changed your name after college. I tensed, ready to leave. Don't go, she said quietly. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to offer you a job. I almost laughed. A job? I just torpedoed a multi-million-dollar corporate initiative. I'll be unhireable within hours. She sipped her coffee. Not with us. We've been tracking the Threshold initiative for months. We knew something was happening, but couldn't get inside. Then you appeared. Who is we? Patient Protection Alliance, she said. Private watchdog organization. We monitor healthcare companies for precisely this kind of exploitation. I'd heard of them, a small but respected advocacy group, known for their investigative work. Why should I trust you? She finally turned to look at me. Because I knew Elizabeth Adams. Not well, but I interviewed her 3 weeks before she died. She was trying to report what happened to her, but she was too sick to follow through. Her records disappeared from the hospital system after her death. My throat tightened. I kept copies. I know, she nodded. You've been very thorough, more than we expected. You've been watching me? Since you applied at Healthcare Analytics Partners, your background check was too perfect, the gaps too neatly filled. She handed me a business card with just a phone number. What you did today will stop one initiative, but there are others. Different companies, different algorithms, same outcome. We need people who can recognize the patterns. I stared at the card. You're offering me a job as what? Corporate spy? Patient advocate with specialized skills, she corrected. The money's terrible compared to what you just walked away from, but you'll sleep better. My phone buzzed with a news alert. The company's stock had dropped 12% in the last hour. Unusual trading activity had triggered regulatory attention. They'll come after you, she warned. Not just legally. They'll try to discredit you, paint you as unstable, vindictive. Having institutional support will help. I need time to think, I said, slipping her card into my pocket. She stood. You have until tomorrow. After that, things get complicated for everyone. As she walked away, another text arrived on my phone from Drake. This isn't over. We know what you did. The next 12 hours passed in a blur. I returned to my apartment long enough to collect my pre-packed emergency bag, my laptop, and Pepper. My neighbor had agreed weeks ago to watch my plants if I needed to travel suddenly. I left her a note and my spare key. At a hotel across town, I checked in under a name I'd established months earlier, paying cash for 3 nights. In the room, I connected to the hotel Wi-Fi through multiple proxies and checked the developing story. Healthcare analytics partners had announced an internal review of unauthorized testing protocols. 2 board members had resigned. The stock continued falling in after-hours trading. Industry forums buzzed with rumors about what had happened in that meeting room. I ordered room service for dinner, feeding Pepper bits of my hamburger while scrolling through encrypted messages from my network of clinic contacts. Reports were coming in of suddenly approved claims, insurance companies frantically reviewing denials that matched the patterns I'd exposed. At midnight, I finally allowed myself to open the small box I'd brought with me. Inside lay Lizzie's medical bracelet from her final hospital stay. I'd kept it as a reminder of my promise to her. I found joy today, I whispered, running my finger over the embossed name. It just looked different than we thought it would. My burner phone rang, the woman from the park. Turn on channel 8, she said without preamble. The local news showed Gloria leaving the company headquarters, surrounded by reporters. Her composed facade had cracked, showing the desperation beneath. These allegations are completely unfounded, she was saying. Our company has always prioritized patient outcomes. The reporter's voice cut in. Sources inside the company claim test markets showed increased hospitalization rates, directly correlated with new denial protocols. Can you comment on that? Gloria's face tightened. No comment at this time. The woman on the phone spoke again. They're looking for you. Your identity hasn't leaked yet, but it will. Have you decided? Through the window of my hotel room, I could see the city lights stretching to the horizon. Somewhere out there, patients were getting calls about reconsidered claims, treatments suddenly approved, lives potentially saved, but also people hunting for me, executives whose millions had evaporated, a system wounded but not destroyed. If I join you, I said, I want to go after the others, all of them. That's why we want you, she replied. Get some sleep. We'll contact you with a meeting location in the morning. I ended the call and sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. Pepper curled against my side, his warm weight, a comfort in the anonymous room. My revenge against Gloria's team was just the beginning. The system that killed Lizzie was bigger than 5 people in a conference room. It spanned companies, crossed state lines, hid behind bureaucratic language, and complex algorithms. I had struck the first blow, but the real fight was just starting. As I drifted towards sleep, my phone lit up with one final message, from a number I didn't recognize. Thank you. My mother's treatment was approved today after 6 denials. Whatever you did, it worked. I stared at the message, wondering which of the thousands of cases I'd tracked had reached this unexpected happy ending. For the first time since entering that conference room by mistake, I felt something beyond anger or determination. Hope, small but persistent, like the first spark of a fire that could eventually burn down an entire corrupt system. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, but tonight I had kept my promise to Lizzie. I had found joy in the most unexpected place, revenge served, not cold, but healing warm. Morning arrived with sharp clarity. I woke disoriented before remembering, hotel room, revenge underway, life irrevocably changed. Pepper whined softly from the foot of the bed, his routine disrupted. Sorry, buddy, I whispered, scratching behind his ears. Normal isn't on the menu anymore. My burner phone chimed with a message containing an address and time, 10 a.m., a coffee shop in a quiet neighborhood. I showered quickly, dressed in nondescript clothes from my emergency bag, and triple-checked that my laptop's encryption was active. The local news played quietly as I prepared to leave. The healthcare analytics partner's story had moved from business sections to front-page headlines. Internal whistleblower exposes healthcare Daniel Sheem, blazed across the screen. I paused, watching with a mixture of satisfaction and terror as a company spokesperson delivered carefully crafted damage control. We take these allegations seriously, conducting a thorough investigation, committed to patient outcomes. Empty words from people scrambling to distance themselves from disaster. A knock at my hotel room door sent ice through my veins. Too early for housekeeping. I hadn't ordered room service. "Ms. Jones?" called a woman's voice, using the false name I'd checked in under. "Front desk message." I approached silently, Pepper at my heels. Through the peephole, I saw a young woman in a hotel uniform holding an envelope. "Leave it, please." I called through the door. "I need a signature," she replied. "Slide it under the door." A pause. "Of course, ma'am." A white envelope appeared beneath the door. I waited until her footsteps receded before retrieving it. Inside was a single note card. "Meeting location compromised. Go to backup site B. Bring everything. H." My pulse quickened. The Patient Protection Alliance woman hadn't mentioned backup sites. She hadn't signed with an initial. This wasn't from her. I grabbed my phone and typed a careful message to the number she'd called from yesterday. "Weather looking bad today. Still meeting?" The response came quickly. "Weather's fine. Original plan stands." A trap. Someone knew I was here. Someone trying to intercept me before I reached the Alliance. I packed in 3 minutes flat, erasing all traces of my presence. With Pepper on his leash and my bag over my shoulder, I bypassed the elevator for the emergency stairs, exiting through a service door that led to an alley. Rain had started falling, providing welcome cover as I navigated side streets, doubling back twice to ensure I wasn't followed. At a corner store, I purchased an umbrella and baseball cap, basic disguise elements that wouldn't attract attention. The coffee shop came into view 15 minutes early. I circled the block, scanning for suspicious vehicles or people who seemed too interested in the entrance. Nothing obvious, but my skin prickled with awareness that multiple groups were hunting for me now. Inside, the shop was half full with morning customers. I ordered a tea and chose a table with my back to the wall, clear sight lines to all entrances. Pepper settled under the table, alert but quiet. At exactly 10 a.m., the brown-haired woman from the park entered. She scanned the room, nodded almost imperceptibly when she spotted me, and ordered before joining my table. "Someone found my hotel," I said without preamble. She sipped her coffee, unsurprised. "Gloria hired private security overnight. Former intelligence types. They're good." "How did they track me?" "Your old phone, probably. You should ditch it completely." I had powered it off but kept it with me for emergency access to certain files. A rookie mistake. "Someone left a note directing me to a backup site B," I told her. Her expression tightened. "We don't use letter designations." That was them. She passed me a plain paper bag under the table. "Burner laptop. New phone. Use only these from now on." I slipped the bag into my larger one. "What happened after I left yesterday?" "Chaos. The board called an emergency meeting. The insurance companies pulled all partnership discussions. The algorithm developers are claiming they didn't understand the clinical implications." "And Gloria?" "Under internal investigation but fighting back. She's claiming the demonstration was manipulated to show false outcomes." I smiled thinly. "The data is real. She knows. That's why she's desperate to find you before you talk to regulators." She leaned forward. "Which brings me to why we're here. The Healthcare Oversight Commission wants a statement." My tea suddenly tasted bitter. "You promised institutional protection. You'll have it, but your evidence needs an official home. Somewhere even Gloria's connections can't touch it." She was right. My leverage depended on the information becoming too public to bury. "When?" "Tomorrow morning. We've arranged secured transport to Washington." I hesitated. This was moving faster than I'd anticipated. "What about the other companies? The wider system?" "One battle at a time, Mira. Establish credibility with this case. Then we expand." The coffee shop door opened, and a man in a charcoal suit entered. Nothing about him screamed threat, but the woman's posture changed subtly. "Time to go," she murmured. "Separately. You first." Outside, the rain had intensified. I walked 6 blocks, randomly choosing directions, before hailing a cab to a different hotel across town. The driver glanced curiously at Pepper but didn't comment when I offered extra cash. In my new room, I powered up the burner laptop. News sites showed Healthcare Analytics Partners stock in freefall. Trading had been temporarily suspended. A second board member had resigned. My new phone buzzed with a message from the Alliance woman. "Confirmed meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Sending secure transport 7 a.m. Location follows." She included an address for a small airport outside the city. Private flight to avoid commercial terminals. Smart. I spent the afternoon organizing my evidence, 3 years of research, 6 months of infiltration, thousands of patient records showing the algorithm's impact, the original code with Gloria's team's digital fingerprints, meeting recordings I'd secretly captured, disguised as system audio tests, enough to bury them completely. As evening approached, doubts crept in. What if Gloria's team had planted countermeasures I hadn't discovered? What if the alliance wasn't what they claimed? What if regulatory capture meant even damning evidence would disappear into bureaucratic limbo? I messaged the clinic network I'd built during my investigation, healthcare workers who'd helped identify affected patients. Status update on previously flagged cases? Responses trickled in throughout the evening. 3 approvals today. Patient 44 got treatment authorization this morning. Insurance company called to review. Previously denied claim. The system was already reacting, trying to cover tracks by suddenly approving what they deliberately denied. Too late for some, but potentially life-saving for others. At midnight, I allowed myself 2 hours of fitful sleep before continuing preparations. The hotel room television provided background noise until a familiar face appeared on screen. Drake, the youngest executive from Gloria's team. He looked haggard, his polished appearance replaced by obvious stress. As Chief Technology Officer, I want to clarify that I had no knowledge of how this algorithm was being implemented, he stated to reporters outside his apartment building. My role was purely technical. The ethical implications were never fully disclosed to me. I laughed bitterly. He'd been the one most excited about the bonus millions, practically salivating over projected figures during planning meetings. The interview continued, Drake distancing himself further from Gloria, with each careful statement. When concerns were raised by certain team members, they were dismissed. I personally questioned several implementation protocols. Pure fiction. He'd never questioned anything except how quickly they could scale the system to more markets. The reporter pressed. Sources indicate the whistleblower was part of your immediate team. Did you have any indication of their concerns? Drake's expression flickered, anger quickly masked by practiced sincerity. I believe this individual felt unable to bring their concerns through proper channels. Our company culture clearly needs examination to understand why. The audacity was breathtaking. He was repositioning himself as a potential ally to the whistleblower, to me, while private security hunted me across the city. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Another company, National Health Solutions, had announced a preventative review of their claims processing system. Their stock had dropped 20% on speculation they used similar algorithms. The dominoes were beginning to fall beyond Gloria's team. The wider system was feeling tremors. Morning came too quickly. I gathered my evidence, secured Pepper's leash, and checked out of the second hotel at 6 a.m. The car would arrive in an hour to take me to the airport. I found a quiet diner nearby, ordered coffee I couldn't taste, and waited. My revenge was working, but still fragile. Everything depended on what happened today. A television behind the counter showed Gloria entering a black SUV surrounded by security. The headline crawl read, Healthcare Analytics CEO Denise Knowledge of Algorithm Mizus. My phone buzzed at 6:45 a.m. Car arriving early, black sedan. Driver will use code phrase, morning delivery. 15 minutes ahead of schedule. I gathered my things, paid my bill, and stepped outside. A black sedan idled at the curb, the window lowered, revealing a driver in a dark suit. Morning delivery, he said smoothly. I approached cautiously. Destination? Westridge Airfield. Your colleague is already en route. Something felt wrong. The Alliance woman hadn't mentioned going separately. I need to make a call first, I said, stepping back. The driver's expression hardened. No time. Schedule change. We need to move now. I backed away further. Sorry, not without confirmation. He opened his door. Miss K, we're trying to protect you. Get in the car. He knew my real name. The Alliance woman had only ever called me Mira. I turned and ran, Pepper keeping pace beside me. Behind me, car doors slammed. Male voices called out. I cut through an alley, emerging onto a busy street where early commuters provided momentary cover. My phone buzzed. The Alliance woman, do not get in any car. Security breach. Stay public. I ducked into a subway station, buying a ticket with cash. The platform was crowded with morning passengers. I blended in, heart hammering against my ribs. The train arrived. I boarded, choosing a center car filled with commuters. As doors began closing, 2 men in dark suits rushed onto the platform. They scanned the windows desperately. but the train pulled away before they could spot me. My phone buzzed again. Go to Central Station, Northeast entrance, blue jacket, red backpack. 20 minutes later, I emerged from the subway at Central Station. The morning rush provided perfect cover as I navigated toward the Northeast entrance. A woman in a blue jacket with a red backpack stood checking her phone. Patient protection, I said quietly as I approached. She nodded once. Follow me, don't speak. We walked briskly through the station to a service corridor, then through a door marked Authorized Personnel Only. A van waited in a loading area, engine running. Gloria's team hired ex-intelligence contractors, the woman explained as we drove. They intercepted our communications last night. New plan activated. The commission meeting? Still happening. Different route. The van took a circuitous path through industrial areas before reaching a small private airstrip different from the original plan. A plain white jet waited on the tarmac. This will take you directly to the commission, she said. Our director is already there, preparing them. What about Pepper? I asked, nodding to my dog. He can board. We made arrangements. As we approached the plane, my phone buzzed one final time. An unknown number. You don't understand what you're doing. This goes beyond Gloria. Beyond one company. Stop now, and we can negotiate. Continue, and you'll regret it. D. Drake, making one last, desperate attempt. I showed the message to the Alliance woman. He's right about one thing, she said. This is bigger than Gloria. That's exactly why we need your testimony. We boarded the plane. As it taxied for takeoff, I opened my laptop and activated one final program I'd prepared. A comprehensive data package sent simultaneously to 17 news organizations and regulatory bodies worldwide. Even if something happened to me now, the evidence would survive. 3 hours later, I sat in a conference room at the Healthcare Oversight Commission headquarters. 8 serious-faced commissioners reviewed my evidence, while federal marshals stood guard outside. This algorithm specifically targeted early-stage interventions in low-income areas? Asked the chairwoman, her voice tight with controlled anger. Yes, I confirmed. The denial patterns were designed to appear random, while following specific demographic markers. And you have proof these patterns were intentional, not algorithmic bias? I pulled up the meeting recordings. Gloria's voice filled the room. The beauty is regulatory oversight only tracks denials that result in fatalities within a specific time frame. Drake's voice followed. 50 million in performance bonuses once fully implemented. Split between us. The commissioners exchanged glances. This is criminal, one murmured. There's more, I said, opening the final file. While infiltrating their system, I discovered connections to 7 other healthcare companies using variations of the same algorithm. Different interfaces, different names, same outcomes. I displayed a network map showing the connections, a web of deliberate patient harm spanning the entire healthcare industry. This isn't just about Gloria's team, I explained. They were perfecting what others were already doing. The entire system is built to deny care while appearing to follow regulations. The chairwoman leaned forward. What do you want, Ms. K? Justice, I answered simply. For my friend who died because of these denials. For thousands of others who suffered, I want the system dismantled. You realize taking on the entire healthcare industry is essentially declaring war? I thought of Lizzie, of her kindergartners making cards she never saw, of her hand in mine as monitors flatlined. The war was declared when they decided profit margins were worth more than human lives, I replied. I'm just fighting back. 3 days later, from a secured location, I watched Gloria being escorted from Healthcare Analytics Partners headquarters by federal agents. Drake followed in handcuffs, his carefully constructed innocence shattered by the evidence I'd provided. The commission had moved with unprecedented speed, working with the Justice Department to file criminal charges against all 5 executives. Other companies implicated in my evidence faced regulatory investigation and shareholder lawsuits. The industry-wide algorithm network was exposed across national news. Terms like algorithmic healthcare denial and systematic treatment obstruction entered the public vocabulary. Insurance companies, desperate to avoid Gloria's fate, began mass-approving previously denied claims. Treatments suddenly became available to patients who had been fighting for months or years. My clinic network reported the changes happening in real time, lives potentially saved by bureaucratic fear of being the next company exposed. The Alliance offered me a permanent position leading their algorithm investigation unit. With my identity now public, Going back to anonymity was impossible. Instead, I would use my new platform to continue dismantling the system from the inside. 1 week after my testimony, I visited Lizzie's grave for the first time since beginning my infiltration mission. I placed fresh flowers beside her headstone and sat on the cool grass. It worked, I told her quietly. Not just Gloria's team, the whole system is cracking open. A gentle breeze rustled the cemetery trees. In my pocket, I carried dozens of messages from patients and families affected by my actions. People whose denied claims had suddenly been approved, whose treatments were now accessible. I kept my promise, I whispered. I found joy. It just looked like justice. The Alliance car waited at the cemetery entrance to take me to my next meeting, a congressional hearing where I would explain exactly how algorithms were being used to deny healthcare to those who needed it most. The fight wasn't over. The system wouldn't change overnight. Powerful interests would resist, regroup, try to undermine my credibility or limit the damage. But they had never faced someone with nothing left to lose, someone who had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, someone whose careful nature had transformed grief into methodical, unstoppable purpose. As I walked back to the car, my phone chimed with a message from the Alliance director. Breaking news. National Health Solutions CEO resigned. Board announced complete algorithm review and patient restitution fund. Another domino falling. The revenge I'd planned for 5 people in a conference room had cascaded into industry-wide reckoning. For Lizzie, for thousands of others, for a system that needed to be broken before it could be rebuilt. I typed a reply. This is just the beginning. Have you ever wanted to fight back against a system that seemed too big to change? Let me know in the comments. And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button for more stories about ordinary people finding extraordinary courage. Because sometimes the most powerful acts of justice start with a single person who refuses to look away.